Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and welcome to finally another live stream. And my apologies for the few minutes delay. Of course, they didn't call for a couple of weeks, and just when you want to start a live stream, crew control calls. But no worries, we are doing the stream, everything is right over here. And yeah, Rumpelstilzchen, exactly, tell them to watch the stream and tell them that's why you don't have any time for them. Exactly what you should do. Alright then, so first live stream in a long time, and I do want to offer a quick explanation as for why that is the case. Now, my old CPU just died, and the simulator just wouldn't run stable anymore, and eventually only with FS 2024 and finally with my new CPU these things have improved, and finally my simulator runs in a manner that is stable enough that I tend to say, alright, it is worth investing the time into a live stream again. So that's why it's been such a long time. But alright then, first of all, hello to everyone in the comments. Hi Guido, hi Eugene, and hi to anyone else as well. So you can already see what we're up to today. We're sitting here in the Air Caraïbes. I do hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm sure someone speaking French is going to be able to correct me over there. Airbus A350 1000. Paris Orly, and from here we're going to make our way over into the Caribbean. What else? Over to Pointe-à-Pitre, and we are going to start having a look into our flight plan. Or actually, we are first of all going to run over into our A350, and only thereafter we are going to check the flight plan. So let's get it powered up first, because that's kind of a bit more important. So A350 1000, here we are. It is the latest version of Jetstream designed Paris Orly, and of course the IndyBuild A350 1000 in the version 1.0.2 that we are using today. SLH sim design for our destination, superb developer, absolutely like him, and well, with that, let's go ahead and power the aircraft up. So with the latest update, we can now also check the battery voltage without having to turn the batteries on. So quick check here, making sure that we are above 25 volts for all the batteries, and then we can power them up left to right, like that, and then the external power can come online as well. And now from here on, the aircraft is just going to take a little while to start booting up. So while it's doing that, let's go ahead and have a look at our flight plan, and for that, of course, at Firefox. That's what I'm using for showing my browser, as that's what quite a couple of you are asking all the time. So we are flying Transatlantic today, so we are of course going to use a little bit of time acceleration while en route, but still we're looking at about a 2-hour crossing, giving us so much time to talk about everything that happened in the meantime and about the aircraft itself. Now, starting with our route, we're departing Paris on an easterly direction today, then we make a turn to the south and then out to the open ocean via Brest, and from there it's going to be around 7 hours 45 over water. We do have a couple of ETOPS segments here. So starting first of all, we've got Shannon. From here we enter a small ETOPS segment of a little time until we reach the 1-hour flight time circle around the Azore Islands and Lajes in particular today, and then from there once again all the way till we reach landfall in Pointe-à-Pitre, Guadeloupe. Now, the significant weather chart is something to take care of today. So we can see over here that we've got severe turbulence forecast up to flight level 340 in that area over here. Unfortunately, there is no way flying around that, so we just have to take the fuel and climb above it in the worst case. Thereafter, we're crossing a jet stream with some clear air turbulences over here, flight level 320-ish, and then we eventually have a little bit of silence until we get into that field with CBs over here. You can see it's a lovely flight that we are planning today. So, got a couple of CBs from about 40 west over here, southbound, and then finally we get into the Caribbean area after crossing the thundery weather for about, I don't know, tell me, well, 2 hours-ish, and then finally the last 2 hours of the flight will be somewhat smooth again, so that we can do the remainder of our service and get our passengers their dinner. Now, Remy asking, are we flying on VATSIM? Well, the answer is I didn't originally plan to do that, because of course we are going to use time acceleration while we are over the Atlantic, and it just seems very busy. Also, currently there is some ATC online in Charles de Gaulle, but none in Orly, so using VATSIM kinda wouldn't make much of a difference. And to be honest, there's just too much traffic over the Atlantic today to do this properly. And our flight number is in use as well, by the way. So for that reason, we will fly offline over here. Now, let's go ahead then and take a look into the airport weather. Now, Orly, good weather conditions all over, and our destination Pointe à Pitre has good weather as well. Easterly winds, that means we are going to fly the lovely and beautiful approach over there, and our destination Fort-de-France has good weather conditions and good weather conditions forecast as well. Now, other alternates, BGY, what's that name again? Barbados is good as well, and Saint Croix as well. Now, for our Atlantic crossing, we are using Shannon as an alternate. They do have some low-lying clouds forecast for tomorrow, but today is actually going to be fine. And then Lajes, well, a little bit of gusts. We'll see how that's going to develop, but that's within the operational limits of the A350. And finally, our destination serves as the last ETOPS airport. So that much about our weather. Going a little bit further in the top into the flight plan then. If we depart on time 0950, which is in actually about 30 minutes, I believe. Yeah, I did of course set my weather slightly incorrectly. Yeah, let's correct for that. So 09, I don't know, 12 on the sim right now versus 0950. So we have a little bit of time for our departure. Now, we are going to arrive well ahead of schedule. I did slightly misplan over here. It should be 1845, not 1945. But in any case, we are going to arrive on time. We're pretty heavy, since Air Caribe has 400 and a bit seats in their A350. 429 seats. That's some 50 more than any builds can actually take. So I did load up a little bit of cargo to get that to work. Now, from here, if we go down a little bit in the flight plan, we can see takeoff weight, more than enough margin, landing weight as well. For the A350-900, we'd be pretty much at the max landing weight, but we're sitting in a 1000 today. Now, if we go a little bit further down the line, we can get our fuel calculations, and 8 hours 6 flight time, 57 tons of fuel, and with that we will land with approximately 7,000 kilos in our tanks, which is absolutely fine for today's flight, so no reason to take any real meaningful extra here. 400 kilos is the taxi fuel, so if we make that 57.5 for our takeoff fuel, then we should be absolutely good to go. Alright, so that's our flight plan and our planning phase completed here. Now, looking into the comments, Eugene asking, are you planning to do April's Cross the Pond if a good slot is available? That really depends on my roster. I'm going to get my roster towards the end of the month on the 25th, and only then I'll know whether I'll have off or whether I'll have to work on Cross the Pond. And until I know that, I'm afraid there is not really too much that I can answer in regards to this question. That's just one of the problems flying for an airline that only releases the rosters rather short term at the end of the month for the next month. Alright, apart from that, GTech has asked, greetings from Las Vegas, so when and where would you discuss all this with your crew? We do this in the briefing room. So basically, the airline has offices where you have briefing rooms, and that's where you discuss all of this. Well, and then I tend to say, let's go ahead and get into it. So we've just powered the aircraft up on the external power. Now we can go ahead and do the technical acceptance here. So press the recall, hold that for 3 seconds, and that should bring... might not have been 3 seconds. That should bring up the status page there. Come on, here we go. Alright, everything normal. Then we gotta have a look at the dispatch page as well, which is going to be added in a future version. So just get that into your habit. Now from there on, let's go ahead and do the APU fire test. And that not only checks the 3 fire extinguishers up here, but you also have the main landing gear bay down here, and you can see that over here you have main landing gear bay fire as well, and then if we go down a little bit, you should see the fire switches illuminate down here as well. So that's something that quite a couple of flight simmers don't really do while they are doing the fire test. Alright, so far so good, the test was successful, so let's start the APU, turn on the ADRs, and with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the electronic flight bag. So we're starting by importing the flight, and yeah, this brings us our registration as well. Jules de Papa is correct. We're flying the Jules de Papa today, flight 540 from Orly to Pointe-à-Pitre. So then, for a ground menu, not that much we gotta do over here, because first of all, let's head over to the load sheet and import all that good stuff from here. Set the 0 fuel weight, so we are going to increase that fuel slightly. 57.5. In the real world, if you order 57.5, they'll probably give you 57.8 or so. They normally just load a little bit more, because the fuel gauges aren't all that accurate. So 5, 800 is something that you could expect reasonably in your tanks when you make a fuel order like this. So let's go ahead and get that up. Now, Elias, where did I buy all those airports? Honestly, it depends. In many cases, the developers just give me review copies, and in those cases, it depends on whatever the developer favors. But Contrail is one of those shops that I do really like. Likewise, the OrbX store, Sim Market. Okay, so since weight is now loaded, let's go down here, and looks like we gotta re-enable the GSX controls to get bringing up. So here we go. Request boarding, please. Gonna take a little while for everything to connect to the aircraft, but they are working on it now. Excellent. Alright, so takeoff performance. This is a very important check to do during the pre-flight, because you just absolutely gotta ensure that you're actually able to depart from the runway in question. You can do things easy here, just synchronize sim brief, synchronize the weather down here, and it just gives you the current weather that's inside your simulator. That's something that's a little strange, in my opinion. If you request the weather using the sync button here, it gives you what's in your simulator at the moment. But if you use the ATC.com page to request the D-ATIS down here, it downloads the current real-world weather. So, yeah, I told Anybuilds about that one. Hopefully they are going to update that soon. Now let's check if we do want to use any intersections. Let's go over to the terminal charts. We're departing from Orly, search that, and we want the aerodrome ground chart. So A350 1000, that's us. So we gotta pin this chart down here. The reason why we have dedicated charts for the 350 is because of the wingspan. It's so enormous that many taxiways are normally not usable. But for us today, parking over here, so we are most likely going to taxi via Lima Foxtrot Whiskey to Whiskey 37. So full runway 07 is available, 3,320 meters. So that's checked up here. Let's just make that 3320 as per the chart. Then we can hit compute, and what we're looking for is the max takeoff weight up here. 323.5 tons. That's the maximum we can lift out of the airport over here. Okay, so, Alex, very good question. If you would get offered to fly the A350 for some other company, would you take it? Probably not at the moment. Because while the aircraft is a really nice aircraft, pilots typically don't choose their job based on an airplane. You know, I chose my job because I want to be at that base. I chose it because I want to fly these types of routes, because I want to have this lifestyle. And yeah, you know, if another airline would offer me to fly A350, then I would still have to probably give up on the base, on the routes, on the lifestyle. So I probably would stick to the airline I'm at the moment. Okay, so one important thing, always preload your en route charts. Those can not be loaded later on, so always do this down here on the ground. That's just a bug in the 350, unfortunately. Hopefully they are going to improve on that with a future version. Alright, so with those basics out of the way, the one thing that I want to do is go down here into the FMS, cross-check ADSC connected, message record, check that there is nothing in here anymore from a previous flight. And then we also go into the surveillance page, make sure that the transponder is on standby, so that we don't just transpond while we're standing at the gate, really. One thing I do want to do in the sim, though, is to go to the aircraft status page already, cross-check we've got the correct engine type, current nav database, delete any of those previously stored elements, and then I want to go up here and request the company flight plan. That may be a bit of a habit from the preview versions of the A350, but in some cases it used to crash the Navigraph module in the FMS, and in that case we got to restart the flight. So for this reason I just want to insert this already, so that I know it's not going to crash on us in half an hour. Well, just a little precaution that I do like to take at the moment. Hopefully we are going to see that fixed soon. I think it might actually be fixed already, but I just got a little bit precautionary there. And Team Simple, I'm not going to comment on which airline I work for. Sorry for that. Alright, now, with that done, we check our oxygen for the captain and the FO, we check the rain repellent level down here, something that many flight simmers forget about. Actually, you do have to check that on the 320 and on the 330 as well, but the bottle is built into the aft walls of the cockpit in those aircraft. For the 330 it's on the aft left, so many simmers do tend to forget checking that. Now going on to the hydraulic page, there's something interesting. By default, the green hydraulic system, even though I refill it on every flight, just drops below the minimum all the time. What's the minimum? You can see that little scale on the side over here, and you can see how that level of that quantity is just dropping below this all the time. So yeah, we got to run over into the maintenance menus and just service the hydraulics here to get that back up. Likewise, the engine oil quantity. For an outbound flight, we're aiming to get it completely full. Actually, in part of the pre-flight checks by the engineers and as part of the ETOPS pre-departure service check, they would refill our oil quantity. So it is realistic when you are going long haul that you refill this to maximum before you actually go out for your flight. Now, last but not least, we would check that on the engine page. You can see by default the FADEC is not powered on the 350. So we got to power it up here on the maintenance panel, and when we do that, it comes to life a couple of moments later, and now we can check the quantity. Now 20 is very, very full already. Normally you're looking more like at something around 18 quarts, but yeah, that's how they do this. So Builds just fills it completely, while in the real world they usually leave a little bit of free room. Because, well, oil expands while it gets heavy, or sorry, while it gets warm. So, yeah. Alright, so that's that part. Now the question, why is there no jetway connected? They seem to have finished loading the cargo, but we don't see any jetway. Why is that? And what's going on with GSX once again? Look at that. Request boarding is no longer available. Huh. Right, let's do operate jetway here. Nothing happens. Oh boy. Jetway? No. Okay, seems inoperative. So be it. Okay, so we consider the jetway inoperative then. Fine for me. Let's just open the doors because it looks a bit nicer. Then we can also open both doors over here. Just makes it look a tad nicer, doesn't it? Alright then, so that good stuff is done. Then let's go ahead and start with our cockpit preparation. So basically, standard Airbus SOP, we ensure that all those white lights are off. And then from the switches themselves, we ensure the evacuation switch is on captain only, oxygen crew supply on, ground recorder or flight recorder ground control on, ELT armed, and then we check that none of the reset buttons up here is pulled out. Now those are actually reset buttons, not circuit breakers, don't get that wrong. The circuit breakers are actually located in the avionics bay. Maybe we can take a look in flight. Alright, the lights are set. Ensure that the navs are set to number 1. That's rather important because system number 2, that one, is not monitored by the ECAM. Only number 1 is monitored. Refueling is complete, so the fasten belts can come on. APU bleed on, external power 1 off. Actually, let me demonstrate that to you. If we go onto the ELAC AC page, you can see that as soon as the APU is online, the APU generator automatically takes over from external power number 1. That's just the way Airbus built it. So what we do then is to set the external 1 switch to avail only, so don't put it on auto, so that the ground crew can disconnect the external power unit at any given time. If it's on auto like that and they disconnect it, there are chances that some sparks might go flying and that can injure the ground personnel. So that's what we do once the APU is available. Now, a couple of you have been asking what each of those switches are doing. The reset buttons are actually not simulated at the moment. They don't have click spots up here, but you don't really get to use them a lot either way. Now, on the A330s, we sometimes do use them because those aircraft are a little bit older. On the 350s, I did talk to one type rating instructor. He's never had to use one on the aircraft yet. Alright then, fuel pumps on, and we always do that left to right, off right to left, but on is left to right. And then over here we again check that nothing is illuminated, and we can turn the forward cargo temperature controller to off if we don't have any temperature sensitive cargo, such as animals or maybe some dangerous goods that need cooling, you name it. We just turn it off, and that saves 0.8% of fuel, which is quite a lot if you think about our trip fuel, almost 50 tons. 0.8%, 1,000 kilos costs some $2,000 at the moment, so that's most certainly worth it. That pays the dinner for the crew. Right, QNH 1002, so let's dial that into the ISIS. And here we go, 1002 is in there. We don't need to set anything up over here, and the anti-skid switch is on. Then going down, radios, I don't know, I'm just going to use 122-800, even though we are flying offline due to the time acceleration later on. Now, quite... Alright, Scott Brandenburg, excellent comment down there. French jetway operator union is probably on strike. Yeah, I feel you, my friend, I feel you. Now, some people are asking all the time, what exactly do you want to listen on? Do you want to listen to down here on the RMP, and what does each of those buttons do? So let's go into a quick crash course. We've got 3 VHF radios here, 1, 2 and 3. Number 3 is on data usually, and that basically just is a data frequency for ACARS. Number 2 is usually the emergency frequency, number 1 the active ATC. Therefore, we want to transmit on number 1 and listen to number 1, which you do by this, pulling it out and then turning it up a bit. You also want to listen to VHF2, which is down here. Don't confuse it with the A320 or A330. This is HF1. VHF2 is down here. We also want to listen to that. Then we want to listen to the interphone, which is how the pilots speak to one another when wearing the headset, and where the ground crew is on. Then cabin is the cabin crew interphone. So over there you have them talking, you know, to one another. And then you have the PA, which is the one to the passengers. You also have VHF3 down here, but we are typically not using this unless, for example, we're over Africa, where you got to monitor both the active ATC, the emergency frequency, and then usually the in-flight frequency, which is 126.9 over Africa. In that case, you would actually switch that active, and then you might also use VHF3. But that's usually only Africa. So that's that setup. Now Elias asked, can you please explain how you set the RMPs and ACPs when CM2 is pilot flying? And the answer is exactly the same. It makes no difference if the captain or the first officer is pilot flying. We use the same setup in both cases. You always use VHF1 for active ATC, VHF2 for the emergency frequency, or the ATIS or company frequency, whatever, but those only temporarily. Default is emergency, and VHF3 for data. So it makes no difference if the captain or the first officer is pilot flying, both have the same setups. And therefore, we also turn the first officer's RMP to exactly that setup. And that's how you do this. Alright, and now the question is, what do you do with the third RMP? And that's an easy one to answer. So The third RMP would normally be used by the third pilot if you're flying with 3 pilots. However, on your normal route, you would fly, or on your normal Caribbean flight that you operate with 2 pilots, you would just set it to squawk over here so that you have an easy way to confirm and set your squawk. But that's that. If you have a third pilot on board, they would probably also go VHF1, VHF2, interphone, and that usual stuff. But 8-hour flight today, so typical 2-pilot operation. Alright, and that is that. Next up, we go down here, check the surveillance page, check the ATC com page, as we've already done. So connection page, check that ADS-C is armed. We'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the Oceanic portion of our flight. And then we can start with our FMS setup. Now, I don't like to look left and right all the time in the simulation. Also, since it's rather hard for you guys to read something if I do this to have everything up at the same time, on my 42-inch monitor that works, but, you know, don't really want to do that. Therefore, I am just going to switch back and forth down here, but that's not what you would, like, normally do. Now, Aviation Sound Expert, can you demonstrate the ADSOR, TCAS and weather radar tests? To be honest, those are not tests that the pilots would do. Therefore, there isn't that much for us to demonstrate over here. Now, that's maintenance stuff. That is really maintenance stuff. Pilots wouldn't do that. And to be totally honest, in the 350 I wouldn't even know how to do it, because, yeah, we don't do that. And I just didn't read into those parts of the aircraft that we don't use. For the 350, that is. 330 is something different, of course, but yeah. Alright, so let's get into the FMS. And just to confirm, since a couple of you have asked about it again, so if CM2 is pilot monitoring, who would use VHF1 for ATC comms? Yes, absolutely. Doesn't matter if you're PF or PM, VHF1 for ATC comms. Now, Rare Luca, is there a light in the 350 that illuminates the overhead panel? Yeah, that's the dome light. So that's the dome light down here. But it just illuminates the overhead as part of the general flight deck. You have nothing that shines onto the overhead like you have it down for the pedestal. Okay, so enough of that. Let's start setting up, because otherwise we're never gonna get into the air. And no worries, I will answer the questions about how I like the 350 later on in the air. Alright, so we're going to cross-check our flight number, and always ensure that this actually is your call sign. So up here you can see you've got the flight number, which is 540, and then you have your ATC call sign, which is 40 Charlie. And I have to say, Inibuilds are the very first developer group to get this correct. Both Phoenix and PMDG have this wrong. They always import the airline's correct code, but the IATA flight number, the passenger flight number. So in case of our flight, 540. But it should be 40 Charlie, the ATC call sign, that you have up here. The term flight number is a little bit confusing, and SimBrief also calls the variable flight number but gives out the incorrect data, so that's a bit confusing. But Inibuilds are the first ones to actually have that right. Now, take a good guess why and what my first bug report was when I tried the aircraft for the first time. But they fixed it, so that's good to see. Alright, so going down, then we check our cruise flight level 340, which is correct, and then we check the cruise temperature and the tropopause, and we can get those from down here. So you have the top of climb, and you always want to take the waypoint after that, so minus 61 degrees, 36,000 feet. The reason you want to do this is because Lido often gets that stuff wrong. In the real world, by the way, so that's real world bug. So 36090 is fine with me. We're cruising on Econ, cost NX20, then we can do a wind data request. And while we're waiting for the wind, Alexis, is it worth to upgrade your RAM from 32 gigs to 232 from 16? Yeah, absolutely. I would actually go for 64 gigabyte. Alright, so the IRSs are all in the nav mode, then we can go up for our departure. And we are departing runway 07 today, and our SID is the Lima Golf Lima to Echo departure. So let's find that in the list down here. Lima Golf Lima to Echo, there it is. Enter, temporary, insert. Now while we have that up, let's go ahead and bring up that chart and cross-check that the SID in our FMS is actually correct. So let's find the SID charts. Then we gotta find the Lima Golf Lima ones. That's a little bit easier in the real world than it is in those in the Lido implementation in Flight Sim. So lots of stuff down here. Let's go ahead and find that chart. If you guys know the number of the chart straight away, then do tell me. But I can't even see Lima Golf Lima in the first place. Do we really have to go over each and every one of those charts now? Actually, this isn't quite easy to find. Where is Lima Golf Lima? Nope, not here. And here we go. Of course, the very last chart that we look at. But yeah, La Igle. Why not? Lima Golf Lima. Who would have thought that? In any case, here we are. So we're departing off 07 down here, and we have chosen the 2 Echo departures. So let's go to plan mode, enable constraints, and now let's have a look. So we are departing initially towards Papa Oscar 081, then slight right turn, Papa Oscar 082, which is an overflight point. That's correct in the FMS there. Then a right turn, waypoint 181, waypoint 185, 187, and then towards the VOR. Yeah, so that looks correct. Alright, so that stuff is in. Then let's enter our arrival. And that's runway 12 over in Pointe-à-Pitre. Then we have 2 approaches available, ILS Zulu or ILS Yankee. I do believe it is the Zulu approach over there. But let's have a very quick look into our destination charts. So ANAF stars runway 12. And we're coming in from over here, I believe, either Bozat or Kaski. Let's see, Bozat. So we continue towards Desto, and then either to AFSAT, which is number 4, so that's the Bozat 2 Alpha arrival. And if we choose that one, let's have a look at the ILS approaches. Then we start in Desto on the Zulu. Let's look at the Yankee approach, see if that's any better. No, not really. Okay. So in that case, we just take the Zulu out of Desto and we fix the rest later. So ILS Zulu approach, then our star is going to be the Bozat. Let's see that again. ANAF stars runway 12. Towards Desto, number 3. Well, since it doesn't say anything different here, I guess we can just take either arrival, really, can we? Well, let's take the Bozat 2 Alpha then, via Desto. Okay, temporary and insert. Now, from here on, we can move down a little bit on that flight plan using the scroll wheel, and we have a couple of waypoints to check over here. So, you don't have your traditional lateral revision page anymore. Therefore, you can't check the coordinates like we used to do it on the Airbus A330. Instead, we can just make it easy and just take the bearing and distances over here to cross-check that everything looks pretty much correct. Now, more on that probably a little bit later. Now, let's go back into the nav aids, and over here we just check that nothing is active. Then we go onto the fuel and load page, and now we can start to enter the data from the load sheet. So we've got a zero fuel weight of 198.7, and the CG is 30.8. So 198.7 and 30.8. Block fuel 57.8, and passenger number 364, because that's the maximum the plane is going to accept. Now, going into the flight plan again, let's enter our fuel figures as well. And in here we have an alternate fuel of 2.8 and final of 2.7. So taxi 0.4, alternate 2.8, and the final 2.7. Alright, now route reserve 3%, and that's it. So 57.7 is in here. Not sure why it says minus 107. Doesn't make much sense if you ask me. But we can quickly hop down to the destination here and just check if something might be messed up on our flight plan, but this looks quite good. Yep, the route is alright. Then I'm just going to disregard that estimated fuel on board here. That is certainly not a correct calculation. We can quickly check the winds though. So winds are in. So those shouldn't be the issue. Well, gonna ignore that for the time being. Then let's go to the takeoff performance and we can grab that from down here. So send it to FMS. Oops, looks like I didn't hit that button. Here we go. And confirm. And this is gonna be a packs off takeoff. Did I do this incorrect down here? Yeah, alright. Well, calculate one more time. We have time today, so not much of an issue. Alright, here we go. So, engine out acceleration 1500 above the ground, that makes it 1800 in here. Like so. Position monitor, we are going to enter our takeoff runway, so that in case of an immediate return, we can just use that bearing and distance reference down here to complete the traffic pattern. And okay, some of you say the block fuel is wrong. Well, that would of course explain stuff. Oh yeah, 7.8. Yeah, we are not gonna get there with that. So 57.7 is currently on board. Very good catch, guys. Let's see what it calculates now. Minus 4.8. Well, let's correct the reserves. Minus 3.7. I still don't believe that. But we'll take it like this. We'll take it, we'll fly there and see what's going to happen. Very good catch, guys. Very, very good catch. Alright, so that stuff is in now. On the climb page, we just check that we have auto derate selected. And we check that the transition altitude is correct. 5,000 feet down here. Let's have a quick look as to what's on the chart. 5,000, perfect. Alright, so that stuff is in here. Then we can go over to our secondary flight plan and just import the active. Go to flight plan, and now let's enter the engine out set. So first of all, let's go all the way to the top. And then insert next waypoint. Now here's a funny one. Builds have just fixed the previous issue where we couldn't... Builds have just fixed the previous issue where we couldn't enter a waypoint that it didn't have in the database. So for example, Oscar Romeo Yankee X-Ray 2 as emergency waypoint. Now the new waypoints page comes up and we can enter it, so we can go LFPO. Yeah, if we type that correctly, that's even better. So LFPO, the bearing is 073, that's our runway heading, and distance 25 miles. And we can store this, but you can see they still have to do a little bit more work here, because now it inserts that waypoint before the runway. Of course, that's nonsense. It should have inserted it behind the runway, like this. So let's just enter that again. Ori X2. And now, interestingly enough, it takes it correctly. So, interesting little bug. I did tell them about it this morning, and they are going to fix it for the next update, but that's just to mention it. So, holding inserted, then we can go new destination, and we're going to go back to Orly, LFPO. And over here, we want to enter an immediate return, and we will choose runway 06 for that, with an ILS approach. Alright, and that's our engine out flight plan now entered. You can see that flight plan down here on the secondary flight plan, and that's what it looks like. Alright, so that stuff's in. Then let's go down to the flight plan info again, and to the fix info page where we are going to enter the extended center line, LFPO 07, and the radial equals the runway heading, so 073. Okay, and that's that. Now, Aviation Sound Expert, you asked a little bit earlier on if I can show you detailed setup of the ETOPS information, and we'll do that when we are en route, just like we would in the real world. Well, and the last thing for us to enter over here now is the emergency point, so that's ORI X2, like that. And now you can see that blue line over here representing our extended runway center line, and you can even see the engine out waypoint that's now showing up there. Well, and that's pretty much everything we needed to do down here in the FMS for now. More to come later on when we are en route. Alright, so to finish this up, the last thing we are going to do is the FCU setup, so QNH, we want airports, VORs, traffic. Initial climb, well, unfortunately we are missing the SID PT chart. Hopefully Asobo is going to add that later on, so let's just use 5,000 for the time being, and then we can enter everything on the FO side as well. Then for the sake of it, let's just load up our safe taxi, or rather our ANF down here. And the last thing for us to do thereafter is the oxygen check. Now, Tom0172, do you think any builds has a good enough job on the system depth if you look at the price? Honestly, there is no doubt that the 350 is on the pricey point of things. On the other hand side, it is a very complex aircraft as well. Probably the most complex aircraft, real-world aircraft that is, that's been simulated in MSFS for the time being. A 777, for example, is a simpler aircraft than an A350. So it is very easy to say that the aircraft would not be up to Phoenix level, but then again, an A320 is a much simpler aircraft than an A350. Is the price fully justified? Honestly, I think you can only decide on that on your own, because I would say yes, because I know how to enjoy these, but other people, you know, who might not go into the systems too deep, or who just want to fly, you know, Paris to London, should probably rather get an A320. But personally, I think the price is worth it, because it just is an A350, and that is a hugely complex aircraft. But, you know, I can see why some people might say it is too expensive. But personally, I absolutely think it's worth it. It's the best long-haul Airbus that's been simulated in the MSFS environment ever. I think we can definitely say that. Note that I did say in the MSFS environment. Alright, so last thing for us to do is the oxygen check. Come on, you stay down here. Yeah. Kinda works, not completely. We'll write a bug report. Okay, so that's our basic setup. Now let's go ahead and do the departure briefing up next. So the pilot monitoring leads the briefing. Let's go over to the right hand seat then. And let's go. Again, if you're interested in a written form of what exactly we're doing over here, check out my checklist and briefing guide for the A330 that you can find on flightsim.to. The 350 is the same in terms of the briefing. So, we're departing Orly, runway 07 via the Lima Golf Lima 2 Echo departure. Initial climb 5000, MSA 3200, and extra fuel and time. Yeah, it tells us a little bit too little down here, but I don't believe it. So, I'd say extra fuel is about 0. So, hotspots for the planned taxi route, honestly, none really. Stop margin in case of rejected takeoff is 0 meters, according to the EFB. I'll just let that stand on its own, uncommented. Engine outset, straight at 25 miles to the Orly X2 point, and for an immediate return we are some 20 tons above the maximum landing weight. Runway 06 is programmed. If we have no time available because of an engine fire or whatever it may be, then we can just come back and do an overweight landing. We can do the overweight landing procedure if we have time available, If not, just start the APU, get the APU bleed going. I don't have anything special on this departure or anything non-standard. Do you see threats? No? Okay, so that's our departure briefing completed. Now look at that. For some reason on the right hand side it doesn't want to load the en route map anymore. That's exactly why I said load it as early as possible on the left. Alright. Well, you are going to be looking at the OFP then. Okay, so that's that. B4 start checklist down to the line, please. Gear pins and covers. Removed. Fuel quantity. So, 57,700 kilogram balanced. Takeoff data. Set. Barrel ref. QNH 1002 set. B4 start checklist complete down to the line. Alright, so we are slowly but steadily getting towards our departure. Let's go ahead and tell GSX to start to prepare the position for pushback and departure, please. Then we can disconnect the external power up here. And chocks and GPU can go. 2 left can be closed as well. Let's take a second to say bonjour to our guests and then we're ready for pushback. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, from the flight deck, this is your captain speaking. My name is Emmanuel, and in the name of Air Carib, welcome aboard flight 5402 Pointe-à-Pitre. Today's flight time is calculated at 8 hours, and we expect a smooth flight for the most portion of the flight, with the chance for a little bit of turbulence every now and then. Therefore, we do request you to keep your seatbelts fastened as long as you're in your seats, even if the fasten seatbelt sign is turned off. Thank you very much for being our guests today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight with us. Ground from flight deck? Go ahead. So, bonjour. Please confirm all doors and hatches are closed, ground equipment is removed, and the bypass pin is installed. That's all confirmed, Captain. Merci beaucoup. An aviation sound expert. Good question there. Do you know if any builds will add synthetic vision for the primary flight display? I don't know. Alright, so, we are going to push facing east today, and then we'll make a U-turn out to the right. Okay, and just for the fun of it, let's go ahead and set some random squawk. So, 6523 is set. Okay, before start checklist, below the line, please. Doors closed, park and brake set, before start checklist complete. And when you say park and brake, you confirm that down here on the PFD. If that's green, that's your park and brake. Okay, before start checklist complete. Ground from flight deck? Go ahead. So, pushback approved facing east and parking brake released. Merci, starting the push, and we call it off block on time. Well, 50 was the schedule. Yeah, we call it on time. 3 minutes is okay. I'm German. I fly on the punctuality of our railway company. And someone's asking down there, are you planning to publish a 777 virtual type rating or A380 virtual type rating? I've kind of done that for the 777 already. I'm not 100% sure for the A380 right now, but it's almost the same as the 350 really. So our engines are behind the road, then let's go ahead and start them up. So when the FADEC is powered, start a timer and wait for another 10 seconds. The reason is that if you start the engine start process earlier, you may get some dispatch messages that are nonsense, but that can actually ground your aircraft. So 10 seconds are passed, engine 1 start. And BD, for the German railway you have to add at least 2 zeros. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I would not stand over here. Just saying. So, still pushing. Looks like they're stopping now. Here we go. Okay, so that's a good start on engine number 1. And the push is complete. Parking brake set. Engine 2 start. Aviation sound expert, if the engine outset is stored in the FMS, will it become solid yellow when you load it? To be honest, I don't know. We don't have that feature in our Airbuses, nor have I ever seen it in one, so can't tell you that. The way we manage the engine outsets in my Airline is pretty much exactly the way that I've shown you on the 350 over here as well. I don't actually know many airlines that would use engine outsets as part of the FMS database. I do believe Swiss does on the 777, so maybe they do it on the 350 as well? Alright, so we have 2 good engine starts. Clear to disconnect, show me the pin on the left. Well, there he is. Alright, wonderful. Thumbs up, and see you next time. Something that many flight simmers miss in the after start flow is that after you've set the flaps, you also gotta check for the status, if it shows down here, and if there is anything in the status page, and then also the trim down here. That's something that many flight simmers don't really seem to do. Now, let's go ahead and do the after start checklist, please. Anti-ice, off, after start checklist, complete. Alright, clear on the left side, and clear on the right side. Taxi routing, we're standing over here, so straight ahead, right, Lima Foxtrot, Whiskey, and then all the way to Whiskey 37, holding point 07. Okay, parking brake released. Let's go. Okay, brake check. Brakes okay. And winter, will I do a hand-flown visual approach? We'll think about it. And yeah, looking at the comments, Mohammed, no need to spam when is the departure, as we're already on taxi out. And I do ask you to treat the rest of the audience with respect, otherwise I'll have to remove you. So, the A350 is a pretty long aircraft, therefore we gotta pay some good attention with our oversteering technique. You can see I'm understeering right now. This is where the main gears should be. In the middle of the taxiway. And this is what it looks like from the cockpit. Alright, so... did I turn the wrong way already? Yeah, we should have gone over there. Alright, that's fine. Did I just go into Whiskey 1 over here? See, that's what happens when you gotta moderate the chat at the same time. Alright, doesn't matter. Then we are gonna go over here. We'll have to backtrack the runway and leave it again over here. Shit happens. In any case, 07 is only used for departures today, so things aren't that bad. Strobe light on. Let's go ahead and backtrack that runway. And Whitson, yeah, exactly. Pretty much treat the 350 like the 777 when you're taxiing it. Alright, everything is clear on the right side. Then let's go ahead and backtrack over here. Orly is a confusing airport, I have to admit that. This is really one of those places where I would want to have a second pilot in the real world and an aerodrome ground movement chart. An aviation sound expert, how do you create block altitudes in the 350? You can't, and in a Boeing you can't do that manually either. If any add-on lets you do it, that's a bug. So block altitude constraints can only come from a database, never from pilot entry. So we'll vacate the runway over here again. We are over here now, Whiskey 36, then left onto Whiskey 1, and then left on Whiskey 37 again. Easy as that. So runway is vacated, entire airplane is off, so strobe lights are coming off. Alright, so off to the right hand side, and just on a quick note guys, I just gotta focus on taxiing and taking off a little bit here. We'll get back to the questions in the chat once we're en route actually. So, left on the Whiskey 1, that's the first taxiway to the left. Clear left side and clear right side. Taking the turn a little bit wider so that I don't have to slow it down to 10 knots. Going at 13 right now. That's okay. And then it's going to be the next taxiway on the left hand side. And with that we've made our way to the runway. Alright, so I have no changes to the takeoff briefing. So auto brake arms, squawk, check, takeoff config is tested. Then we can do the before takeoff checklist down to the line please. So flight controls. And we gotta do that check now. So, full up, full down, neutral. Full left, full right, neutral. And the rudder, full left, full right, and neutral. See, that's why we have checklists. Okay, so off to the left over here, and then we can continue with the before takeoff checklist down to the line, please. So, flight controls, checked. Flight instruments, checked. Briefing, confirmed. V1, VR, V2, and thrust rating. So that's 150, 152, and 158. Flex 50. Squawk, set. Before takeoff checklist complete down to the line. Alright, so runway 07 cleared for takeoff. RKW 40 Charlie. Cabin crew, prepare for departure, please. Before takeoff checklist below the line. Takeoff runway 07 full length. Cabin crew advised, packs off. Before takeoff checklist complete. And then let's take as much of that runway as we have available. Lights are on, everything is ready, so we are ready to go. Normally Airbus does recommend a standing takeoff on the 330 and the 350, so we are going to do that. Okay, are you ready? Yes. So, lights are on, take off. Manflex 50, SRS, runway, auto thrust blue. Thrust set. Knots, checked.
V1.
Rotate. Positive climb. Gear up. Nav. Checked. So 12.5 degrees is the initial pitch. Thereafter you can follow the flight director. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, reaching the acceleration altitude. Let's get that nose down. Thrust, declimb, climb, auto thrust. Okay, packs on. So, I did see online that some of you were a little offset by the fact that the aircraft is thrown around left and right quite a bit. But I gotta say, if the 350 is by any means similar to the A330, then that is actually realistic. So people or flight simmers tend to say like, yeah, but it's a heavy aircraft. That's true, but it also has huge wings. So the 330 at least is significantly affected by turbulence. So I could imagine that the 350 is as well. But then again, might be wrong about that as well. But I don't see anything that's grossly off there, like some people seem to say on the internet. Okay, and yeah, as some of you have correctly stated, could have selected weather up here for our departure. Now, would it have made a difference? No, because you can see the weather. But you are correct, should have selected that. Love the views. I really love the views here. And the 350 is just an awesome aircraft to look at, isn't it? So, there's Oli down there. Alright, where did it pitch itself? Shouldn't have done that. Let's just work a little bit on the FCU up here, continue the climb. I have a feeling my joystick is a little bit off at times, because that happens with the Phoenix as well. It doesn't seem to hold the attitude that well anymore. Right, set standard. Standard thrust check, passing flight level 6-1. Now. Checked. So, note to myself, when you are manually flying, don't go outside for too long. Alright. So, here we go. Then, let's continue that climb to somewhere like level 200 or so. And let's do the after takeoff checklist. Yeah, speed limit exceeded. We've already returned to the speed limit. That's fine. Right, so after takeoff checklist. Complete to the line, below the line please, barrel rev. Standard set, after takeoff checklist complete. And someone's asked if the block fuel is correct. Yes, indeed it is. It doesn't seem like much, and yeah, we'll talk about the destination EFOB Amber a little bit later. Come on, airplane, why are you pitching down again? I have a feeling that Thrustmaster Airbus stick of mine is really going nuts these days. It keeps commanding stuff to the aircraft that I'm certainly not commanding myself. Just small movements though, so hard to see when you are not actively doing an input. Did any one of you using a Thrustmaster Airbus stick experience that yet? Because I thought they said that their new technologies with all those Hall sensors and you name it would prevent that kind of stuff from happening. But for some reason that doesn't seem to work too well for me. Alright, passing level 100, time to accelerate, and with that I'll also put the autopilot on. AP1. So, lights off, signs off, and the EFIS CPs are set. We can go to weather on both sides now. Down here, nothing manually tuned, and we have an optimum flight level 365 and a maximum flight level 381. So anything 360, 370 around looks good to me. Simbrief planned us a little bit lower, I believe. Come up here. Yeah, Simbrief wants us in 340 at first, then 350 later. That's fine. We'll go to level 350 straight away. And when we head out to the Atlantic at Reggie, then we'll go to flight level 360. So, you give me 350, please. Okay, I'll cruise flight level 350 blue, and new cruise out flight level 350. Perfect. So that stuff is entered. Okay, now, Doodoo, is the A350 more sensitive than the A320 in real life? That's at least what many pilots say. Okay, we don't need that timer anymore down here, so let's go ahead and forward to the interesting things. First of all, let's fix that destination fuel on board here, because we should be able to fix that just by entering the step climbs. So let's go down here, step out, and we are starting our first step at Regi, flight level 360. So, Regi 360. Then at 34 north, 040 west, flight level 380. So, just gotta check the name of that one. Let's just insert this. Thank you, and then scroll down a little bit. So, at 34N040W. Like that, flight level 380. Alright, Tempe and insert, and if we now look at our estimated fuel on board, we should be fine. Yep, all of a sudden, look at that, 3.4 extra, 39 minutes. That's exactly what I said earlier on. So yeah, Nico, you are right, I should have entered the steps on the ground. I just didn't want to make it too long, really. So, from here on, we're up in the climb, and this is where things would get a little bit more relaxed. You can see we are using the auto derate for the climb, which is going to make the entire climb take a little bit longer than what you would normally expect. Now, typical climb times in an Airbus range between 25 to 35 minutes, really. If you're in Dubai with very high ISA deviations, it's going to take longer. Over here, I guess something between 25 to 30 minutes. But let's go ahead and turn on time acceleration so that we get that Atlantic crossing done a little bit quicker. So options, simulation, and time compression auto. You will see the aircraft actually does that very, very well. The only thing where it starts having some problems is when it's doing a constant Mach climb. Constant speed works very well. Vertical speed mode does as well, but you're going to see that in action. Now, for the approach that we're going to fly, we'll have to see about that. We'll talk about that when we get closer a little bit later. I'm kind of a fan of a visual approach, but we'll see. We'll see. For now, we've got the ILS in the box, and more options to decide on will be discussed in the flight. Now, at this point in the flight, we'll just get it up to cruising level, and then we'll decide on what we are going to do next. And the first thing is going to be to prepare the Atlantic crossing, and we can actually work on that a little bit for now already. So we are going to enter the Oceanic airspace at Reggie, and that's at time 1054. Now, we do have to submit our clearance request latest 30 minutes prior. For this reason, let's go ahead and create a time marker. 1057 is the estimated time now. 1058, so I tell you what, let's just go down here, time, marker, And if 1058 is the time overhead, then I'll set 1028 down here on the timer. Insert that, and you can give me an oral alert as well. And here we go. So now, we do have a time marker on our nav display at time 1028. And that's the latest time where we have to submit our Oceanic clearance request. And Nico, when did they add ETPs? To be honest, I'm not 100% sure if that is actually fully added yet, but things such as time markers and stuff like that are in the aircraft since the release. But a little bit more on what we are using at what time later on. So now we're getting into the regions where the plane has a little bit of trouble in time acceleration, but you can see if we just go vertical speed, it stabilizes itself again. So that's what I'm going to do here. It's just that when we do that, we got to pay a good eye on our speed to avoid it from dropping too much. That's the only situation in which the 350 doesn't do proper time acceleration here. And Coda 101, is the nose wheel steering fixed in 2024? Does it allow for full deflection? To be honest, I'm not aware that it did ever not allow for full deflection. But you probably mean if the aircraft is going to skid or not. And the answer is, it's better than in 2020. I wouldn't say that it's perfect, but it's better for sure. So let's give ourselves a little shortcut here. The French are very good with those directs if you go Oceanic, so let's just go direct to Reggie. So, Reggie, insert direct 2 with the beam points please, and insert. I do love the directs on the nav display, by the way. Really cool feature that the 350 has there. Alright, all crew star. And we're up in level 350. 23 minutes into the air. That's quite quick, to be honest. Really quick indeed. But okay, look at that. It's actually 6 degrees colder than ICAO standard. So yeah, that probably explains it. Now getting up to cruise altitude, let's have a look down here. Top of climb should be 25 minutes, 49.8 in the tanks. We're at 24 minutes, 51.9. So we have like 2,000 kilos more. That's okay. So we have Upalo as waypoint for a fuel check. And we're going to be there momentarily. And at Upalo we're supposed to have 49.7. So let's just wait until we cross Upalo over here, do the fuel check, and then we'll go ahead with the preparation of our Oceanic flight. So, passing a beam Upalo just now, 51.6, so we have 1,700 kilos more in the tank. And in terms of time, we're 27 minutes en route, should be there 27 minutes en route, so we're running perfectly fine. At this point, we'd start to have a look at the en route chart and have a look at the Oceanic portion of our flight. We can see over here that we are entering the Oceanic segment with Shanwick, and since New Year's Eve, we no longer need Oceanic clearances. But we still have to submit our clearance request so that they know that we're coming, when we're coming, and so that they know at which time we're coming. By the way, let's just quickly go back to real time over here, because I did just notice that I forgot to turn on my time accelerator. There's a very nice tool available on flightsim.to. It's called Sim Rate or Sim Time Rate Adjuster. If you turn that on, the time actually passes with the correct real world, or with a correct time compression. But you can grab that on flightsim.to, really useful tool. Turning it on in the background right now, waiting for it to connect, and then we'll go back to time compression. While we're waiting for that, of course, I did just move the time over which we are going to arrive at Reggie, which is 1044. So basically we should send the Oceanic request just now. Now let me just show you how we do that. So you go into the ATC com page, then you go on to request, and then you have clearance and Oceanic. So down here you simply enter anything that would matter to your flight. So Oceanic Center for us today is going to be Echo Golf Golf X-Ray, and it certainly helps if you spell that correctly. So Shanwick, then we're going to enter the Oceanic point overhead Reggie, like that. ETA Reggie is now 1044. And yeah, then you enter your Mach number and your flight level, and that's it. You are not going to receive anything in return anymore. That's new since New Year's Eve. The plane just, or the way that Oceanic ATC works nowadays, doesn't require you to get a clearance in the North Atlantic anymore. You simply maintain your last ATC assigned data. Alright, so with that out of the way, once we have sent this out to ATC, we are going to start entering the stuff that really matters for us. And we can consider using strategic lateral offset over here, so a slop procedure, and we are going to use that today. So over at Reggie, or let's do it one later, let's do it over at Atiki. Over here we go offset, and we start at Atiki, we end at Banji. 30-degree angle intercept, we want to go 1 mile offset, always to the right, never to the left, like that, and then temporary and insert, and with that our slop is already entered. We'd also enter a constant Mach number, but Inibuilds didn't simulate that just yet. So you could do that down here on flight plan info, or actually you could do that over here on the revisions page, and down here you would have CMS, constant Mach number. That's going to be implemented for a future version, but it's not there just yet. And like that you would tell the aircraft exactly which Mach number to fly. So something like Mach 8.5 would be a typical speed in the 350.
Time marker.
Alright, that's the time marker. And that was the marker that I set earlier on for our Oceanic clearance. So we would now know that this is the latest time we'd have to send out the Oceanic request. Well, and with that, there isn't that much more to do for us. Now, we can go ahead and enter all the all the ETOPS points already, but we can also wait a little bit with that, because now we are just heading out to the open ocean, and if we look into our flight plan down here, we can see the ETOPS entry is only 1 hour and 40 into the flight. You can see we're just 40 minutes up, so we'd have another hour to do all of that. So, in my opinion, the most important thing to do when flying long haul is to relax. Don't push anything on the time. We have all the time available, so hey, let's just make good use of that. Another cool feature that Inibuilds have added with the latest update of the 350, by the way, is the minimum off-road altitude. We can see that down here on the vertical situation display, or the vertical display as Airbus calls it, and you can see that it tells us that 1000 feet is the minimum off-route altitude, so the minimum altitude that keeps us safe at the moment. And, well, if we look at, tell you what, let's get the terrain up. If we look at this, we can see we're basically over water already. So 1000 feet above water is the minimum safe altitude. So look at that, we've already passed the French coast and we're already out in the Atlantic. And we're going to stay here on the Atlantic all the way until we arrive over in Pointe-à-Pitre. So back inside for the time being. One thing that we have to ensure though is that by the time we reach the Oceanic entry point, which is Reggie in our case, we have the altitude that we are supposed to have in Reggie. We did request flight level 360 for our Oceanic crossing. Therefore, we've got to negotiate the climb to flight level 360 on our own with air traffic control so that we reach it latest by Reggie. Now, in the real world, easy going. They ask you for it anyway. Here we go. Thrust decline, climb, alt cruise, flight level 360 blue. Mach, alt cruise star. And here we are in 360 for the Oceanic tracing. Easy, isn't it? New cruise out, flight level 360. And time marker reached, yeah, we do know that. Now, something that's still a little bug here is you can see we've executed the step climb to Reggie. For some reason it still tells me that step climb down here. So let's go ahead and remove that from our step page before we actually get there, hoping that that's kind of gonna fix that. So can we delete it somehow? That's actually the hard part on 350. Reggie, no, I don't think we actually can we? Okay, well, then we've just got to leave this. Can we clear that down here? Yes, we can, okay. Perfect, so insert that. Now we should have the step climb to level 380 up next. Here we go. 40 west, 380, 1,717 miles. Perfect. So as you can see, a couple of small bugs there, but overall the airplane is doing really fine. Now, Coda 101, that's probably the big question that everyone's waiting for. Has the A350 exceeded your expectations from when it was announced? Yes, it has. I have to say, my expectations were pretty low. Because I was like, well, what are they gonna do? Create the most complex of all airliners out there within, 1 year's development time? And I really thought it would be pretty bad, to be honest. Pretty bad. That's because I just wouldn't want to believe that they can do it, can pull that off in this amount of time. But they actually exceeded my expectation by far and created something that's pretty good. Not perfect, no doubt about it, but very good. So let's go ahead and get a couple of those sunshades down here. This is really what the flight deck would look like during the flight. Get all of that closed. And here we are. Now reaching Atiki, we are going to turn onto the slop, so 1 mile off to the right. And Julian Third, what are my FS 2024 settings? Pretty much simply ultra. Alright, passing Atiki, we're turning 1 mile offset. You can see that indicated down here on the nav display as well. And that's just the standard strategic lateral offset procedure that we always apply. Now, Mohammed Muslim, how do you control the aircraft on a manual landing? We'll talk about that in a few moments. First of all though, let's go ahead and start entering our ETOPS waypoints, since that is something that a lot of you have asked for. Now, we start on the data page up here, and then we go to the waypoints page, pilot stored waypoint, and then we click new waypoint. And over here we can enter all our ETOPS points. Now, if we look at our operational flight plan, let's actually go ahead and find the correct part in the plan. Here we are. So that's our ETOPS entry point, based on Shannon Airport. We always call the ETOPS entry Echo Echo Papa 1, if it's the first entry. So Echo Echo Papa 1, ETOPS entry point 1. And insert. Now let's go ahead and enter its coordinates. So we are at 4724.8 north. Enter. And the longitude is going to be 01651.2 west. So 01651.2, that looks correct, and store waypoint. Now, next up, let's go down here and onto the flight plan info, fix info. And now, into the fix 1, we are going to enter EEP1, enter. And now, you can see our ETOPS entry point is located just over here. Just make sure that you don't insert this into the flight plan page, because that is going to mess it up. And yeah, Fat by Fat UK, well spotted, very slight coordinate entry error, but you can see it just offset it very slightly from the plan. I'm happy with that, not going to connect that. And Sunaokami Shiroko, in the most recent update they added equal time points. Are you going to use that in real life? Absolutely, and we'll have a look into that in a few moments. Let's just go ahead and enter the remaining ETOPS points first, because we still have to do that. So next up, we go back to waypoints, pilot stored points, new waypoint, and now we gotta have a look into which airports we have. So we have Shannon and Lajes over here. And we would now go ahead and create those points based on the IATA codes of those airports. So Shannon is SNN. So we can go down here, waypoint ident, Sierra November November. And Lajes is Tango Echo Foxtrot, I believe, or Tango Romeo Foxtrot, something like that. So pretty much like that. And then we can enter the coordinates again. So that's 4712.2 north. And the longitude is 01832.6 west. 01832.6. Alright, store waypoint, and that way we can now enter all those waypoints. Now there is a small problem with SimBrief flight plans when you plan an ETOPS flight, and I'm going to show you that in the browser because you can see it a lot better over there. So if we have a look at the SimBrief website over here, then we can see that we do have an ETOPS segment over here. But this part over here is not ETOPS because we are within 1 hour flight time from Lajes Airport. So we should have an ETOPS exit point here and another ETOPS entry point here. And I did go ahead and create those off screen using different SimBrief flight plans so that we actually do have that data available. And the first ETOPS exit point towards Lajes is going to be at 4535.0. So we can now enter a new waypoint, call that ETOPS exit point 1. And that one's going to be at 45350 north. And at, let me see, 2337.9 west. So what did I say? 2337.9. So that's our first ETOPS exit point. So let's, now that we have created those points, let's go ahead and insert them on our fix info page. So fix info. So over here we have SNN Tango Echo Fox, which we can now see over here. That's the equal time point between Shannon and Lajes. From our flight plan, we have more to come in a moment. And then we have our first ETOPS exit point, which we can see over here. So that's EXP1, enter. And that shouldn't be too far off. Let's see what we can find. Yep, there it is. So that's our first ETOPS exit point. Because we are within 60 minutes flight time from Lajes by the time we reach that point over here. Now the next thing is going to be to check our weather. So let's go down here, D-ATIS, and what do we need now? We need Echo India November November. Then we are looking for, let's see, what's the ICAO code of Lajes again? Lima Papa Lima Alpha. And then Tango Fox Fox Romeo is going to be the third airport along our route, so let's also request that. Alright, update all. Let's see what kind of weather we have at the airports in question. So we can see Shannon, very good weather conditions, runway 06 in use over there. And cover K, 16 degrees, QNH 1002. LAFES, the anemometer, the one that measures the wind, is broken. Light rain, 14 degrees, QNH 1013. And our destination at the moment, 28 degrees. Totally lovely. Alright, so a couple of things that you can do now to visualize where your ETOPS alternates actually are located. I'm going to show you a few of them. So, going down here into the flight plan info, we have the closest airport tab available. Now, that one, for some reason, doesn't seem to work on my version of the A350. Interestingly enough, for many others it works, so I'm not 100% sure what's going wrong there. But, yeah. Now, in any case, you do have more options available. So the next one is on the flight plan page, then you go fix info, and this is what we do on the A330. So you go to the fix over here, now we enter the airport. So Shannon as our first ETOPS alternate. And now, let's just go ahead and draw ourselves a radial that goes from that airport so that we can visualize on our nav display where that is located. So for example, I'm drawing radial 250 over here, which ends over there, okay. On the 330, those radials are a lot longer, like 720 miles, I believe, so it should go until here. That way you can kind of draw yourself a little triangle like this, using the radials, to mark the exact position where your ETOPS alternates are located. But it kind of works like this as well. So we are going to do this. Alright. Well, and for the time being, that's about everything we had to do over here. Some pilots use the secondary flight plan to create diversions if needed, but yeah, that's really down to each pilot. Everyone does that differently. You can also use the position monitor, by the way. So down here, Shannon, Echo India, November, November, runway 06, enter. And we can see down here, bearing 040 and 430 miles. Now bearing always means the direction from us, so 040, so Shannon is in that direction, 430 nautical miles. And that's about as easy as it gets, isn't it? A little bit of weather over here, but this is typical Asobo weather radar. Look outside, we're totally fine, you can just fly over it. But, yeah. Asobo tells me there's a big red wall in front of me. Gonna disregard that, shall we? Now we've passed the ETOPS entry point, as we can see down here. And with that, we are now on the first ETOPS part of our flight. We have the equal time point over here between Shannon and LAFES. Now, something you can do if you want to use an ETP from any airport is you go down here, flight plan info, and then equal time point. And over here we can now enter, for example, Shannon and LAFES. Like that. And now the system automatically determines where the equal time point between these two is located. But do note that we have to enter the winds manually. Now, there are so many different philosophies between what kind of winds to enter. Some people say, well, at what altitude are you going to fly the diversion? Are you going to fly it at cruise level? Are you going to fly it in flight level 100? You can't really foresee that. For this reason, I just don't enter a wind at all. Others do. I don't think there is a right and a wrong here. In my opinion, the easiest is just to use the points from the flight plan, and then use this down here to create an equal time point between any of those en route alternates. Okay, so that's that for the time being. We can see by looking outside that we have a little bit of turbulence here, so let's go ahead and actually turn the fasten seatbelt signs on. Alright, passing the first equal time point between Shannon and LAFES, And we are supposed to be here 1 hour and 48 minutes in flight. We are 1 hour and 47 minutes in flight. Fuel on board planned 43.3. We have 42.3, so a little bit less. So at 20 West we are most definitely going to conduct a fuel check to see what we're up to by the time we get there. And Herc 130, why don't you put range rings on the ETOPS entry and exit? That's Boeing stuff. We don't do that on Airbuses. In fact, most Airbuses can't even take that range. I know that INI builds have increased the range to 999, or probably even 9,999 on the latest update, but to be honest, I'm not sure if the A350 can actually do that. The A330 certainly can't. So, yeah, that's Boeing stuff. We don't do that on Airbuses. Now that we finally have a little bit of time available, let's go ahead and have a look into the comments. Sorry it took so long, guys, but you could definitely see how much there is to do for us on a typical North Atlantic crossing. So, going Dutch films, have I experienced Wathen crashes? I had one, yes. And that one that I had was with the original release version. But you are actually still gonna get that video. By the way, crossing 20 West, 154 en route, 40.6 tons. We're at 155, 41.6 tons. So we have 1,000 kilos extra fuel. Perfect. Okay, so, Cloud Surfer, where am I based at? At Frankfurt. And Tom0172, any plans for the PMDG 777 ebook? Yeah, hopefully soon. It's really hard to find the time. It really is. By the way, things smoothed out again, so fasten seatbelts back to auto. Yeah, it's really hard to find the time to finish it at the moment. But I'm still working on it, promised. Now, Nico, what approach are we expecting? Not 100% sure yet. Some say visual, some say ANAV. We'll see about it. The only thing that I can say already is that we will not fly an ILS. And Aviation Sound Expert, can we create a time marker with text, please? We can. The question is why do we want one with text? Is there any hidden bug? Will that crash me to desktop? In any case, let's go for that. And if we're on it already, since we're ETOPS, or since we are more than 10 minutes Oceanic, let's also set Squawk 2000. Alright, nonetheless, time. The question is, let's just say it's 11:51 now, so let's create one for 1200. So that's 1200 over here. Now I'm not 100% sure if that text should actually show up on the screen or if that's just a reminder. We'd actually have to check that in the FCOM, so let me do that real quick. So, searching for it in the FCOM as we speak. Time function. So, there doesn't seem to be anything about that text for the time being, it seems. No, the AFCOM actually doesn't tell me if that should show up on the nav display, or if that's just a reminder inside the FMS. I don't know. I don't know for sure. I can't tell you that. And Eugene, yeah, I do know the meaning of Bliat, no worries. So, time marker in...
Time marker.
Here we go. But yeah, I can't tell you that if that text should have shown up anywhere or not, but doesn't really matter too much, does it? And Nico, yes, we are talking about time marker on the ND, so you say that it does not show a text on the ND. Alright. That's cool. So, there were a couple of questions again of how much I like the A350 and what I think of it. So, let's just point that out once again. I think the INI-built A350 is actually a pretty good aircraft. They do simulate most systems that are used in, you know, a normal transatlantic crossing. At the moment, constant Mach, I believe, is the only one, and the latitude-longitude crossing points are like the only ones that are still missing. Apart from that, they have pretty much all systems. However, I think Equal Time Point also needs some more updates. Because we could see when we entered it that our ETP was nowhere near the ETP that we had on our flight plan. So normally they are within a couple of miles of one another. So there might still be some bug in there. And Tom, I like how they hung the reflective vest on the coat hanger. Yeah, they do have quite a couple of those nice features in here, honestly. And some repainters actually do quite a great job with repainting these things here. So, INI-built crew, huh? I like it. And we have an INI-built flight bag as well down there. Quite cool stuff. Now, in regards to how I like the INI-built 350, I think it simulates pretty much almost all systems that we use on a normal flight. It's not study level. We can say that much. It is definitely not study level. But it's pretty nice. We can follow the normal ops on a transatlantic flight. And I think we can do that with an aircraft that is so complex. The 350 has so many systems that older aircraft doesn't have. That this kind of explains the price as well. Of course, combined with the superb model that we've got with the aircraft. There's no doubt about that. So, very good modeling. Systems, in my opinion, are okay. They cater for what 99% of flight sim users will need. We can say that for sure. And Lord Jonas, yeah, Phoenix certainly is study level. So, passing 25 west, quick fuel check. Should be there at 2 hours 23 and 37.5. We're here at 2 hours 23 and 38.4. So, saved a little bit of fuel, a little bit ahead of time. Perfect. So, we're still running well. We are currently back outside ETOPS again. Let's go ahead and start to create the next couple of ETOPS points that we'll need for this flight. So, data, waypoint, stored waypoint, new waypoint. So next up is going to be ETOPS entry number 2. EEP2. And that one is at... Let me actually find that. Trying to search for it offline because I had to do a little bit of modding there. And Leo Gui, yes, I absolutely think the PMDG 777 is study level. It absolutely is. The Phoenix, the PMDG, and the Leonardo Mad Dog, those are the three real study level aircraft, of iterations of modern aircraft, and then you've got things like the Just Flight BAE 146, which are fairly good as well. Alright, nonetheless, ETOPS entry number 2 is at 3720.1. Come on. So, what did I say now? 3720.1 degrees north and 3613.0 degrees west. So, 36330. Alright, so that's ETOPS entry number 2. Then we have the second equal time point. Let's find that down here, which is between Lajes and Pointe-à-Pitre. So that's gonna be new waypoint, Tango Echo Romeo Papa Tango Papa. And you are located at 2830.0. And 4624.8. That right? 4624.8, yes. Okay, and store. And then we'll need ETOPS exit number 2. So EXP2, enter, and that's gonna be that one down here at 2044.8. And 5526.4 west. So what did I say? 5526.4. No? Like that. Alright, store waypoint, and now let's go back to the fix page and prepare that. And then we hopefully have it for the rest of the flight. So, EEP2. Enter. Tango Echo Romeo Papa Tango Papa. And ETOPS exit point 2. Here we go. That's all the good stuff entered. Very nice. Okay. So, here we are. Very nice. And with that, we are flying along on the North Atlantic. Looks like the optimum is 380 already. Step climb is in only 800 miles though. Well, if the optimum is already 3.8, then let's go up to 3.8. So at this point, we would use CPDLC, so ATC-COM, request, vertical, climb 2, flight level 380, enter, transfer to mailbox, and if we were connected with the controller now, we are not in the sim, so we are not going to get any answer. You just send it out, and then you would eventually get your climb instruction back. Well, and then 3.8 and climb. So, thrust decline, climb, alt cruise, flight level 380 blue. I really like how quick the A330 or the A350 climbs. You really get to fly at very high altitudes, which on one side makes it very economic, but also rather unhealthy due to all the radiation up here. Boeing pilots are really have an advantage there because Boeings tend to fly much lower than Airbuses do. But yeah, that's it. And now 2,240 miles left to our top of descent, divided by 4 for time acceleration, so we're looking at about an hour and 10 minutes or so for the remainder of our cruise flight. So up there is our next ETOPS entry. All this area in front over here is non-ETOPS because we are flying within 1 hour from Lajes Airport. Okay, and that's really that. So, Alex, very good question. How do you manage your sleep schedule as a long-haul pilot? Honestly, that's one of the very difficult parts of the job. You just gotta try and catch as much sleep to the times that are as normal as possible to your time zone. My personal strategy is that I'm trying to not adapt to the local times. So if I was to do this flight, I would just go to sleep, you know, at normal Paris time, if that's my home base. And then try to catch a couple hours sleep before the return flight. And then during the return flight, you would very likely fly this with 2 pilots only. During the return flight, yeah, a lot of Diet Coke, huh? To keep you awake. And when you get back home, yeah, get as much sleep as possible. Flights in Pilot 1, are you captain or first officer? In my current airline, I'm a first officer again. Now, Max Steiner, what do you think of train drivers? Well, they operate heavy equipment. Not sure what to think of them. It's a job. Right, so, Ryan, do I prefer flying short haul where I'm gonna get home every day or long haul? Most definitely long haul, because it's more relaxed, you know? If you operate on short hauls, you do like 4 flights every day, and don't be mistaken thinking that you are not going to do night shifts on a short haul flight. No, you will. You often have to get up at 2 a.m. or only get back to bed at 4 a.m. You know, I think long haul is easier. You know, once we're in the air, like now, we have time available. We can just relax a little bit. Only got to do a couple fuel checks here. We just passed 30 west, so let's do that fuel check. Where's the plan? It is 30 west, 259, 33.8. 259, 34.6. So we're saving a little bit of fuel still. Round about 1,000 kilos more in our tanks. Perfect. So that's what I like about flying long haul. You just have time to sit back, relax, enjoy the flight. And it's a lot less work that you have to do on the long hauls. Of course, on the way back home, you are going to fly all the way through the night if you had a westbound rotation. But you know, even when you do these kind of things, you can still sleep a little bit. You know, we have that procedure called controlled rest. Controlled rest basically means that if one pilot is fit and awake, the other can close the eyes and sleep for a little bit in order to build up a little bit of energy. And yeah, we most definitely do that regularly. That's a very normal procedure. Now, of course, when we do controlled rest, we would inform the cabin crew, we would tell them that we are going to do that, and then we would agree on a certain time interval within which we are going to regularly call the cabin crew and advise them that we are still awake, in order to ensure that the remaining pilot does not fall asleep. Now, how do we do that? Basically, I would use the time marker function for that. So a normal interval to call the cabin crew would be every 20 or every 30 minutes. For that, I'd go down here, time. Let's say we agreed to do controlled rest now. Then I would probably tell the flight attendant that I would call them at 13:30, because it's 12:55 now, so half an hour later. So what I would do is this, 13:30, enter, then again half an hour later, so 1400, and then maybe even at 14:30 again. So I would just enter those time markers, and well, I would deactivate the oral alert because I don't want to wake up my colleague, of course, if they are sleeping. But that way, we now have some nice markers on here, and every time I'm overflying one of those markers, I would press the cabin call button and tell them that I'm still awake. And if I miss that, yeah, then they are going to get entry to the flight deck and will wake us up. But that's how we do that. So, Tom, is the salary of pilots good in Europe? Really depends on the airline. Some are really bad. Think Wizz Air. Many Eastern European companies pay really bad. But once you make your way into, you know, proper airlines, then you also earn decent money. And honestly, right now, I'm pretty happy in terms of the salary, so nothing to complain about there. Of course, it's not comparable to the United States. In the US, yeah, they make a good fortune more, like 3 times as much, but that's alright. I'm not gonna be one of those people saying that they earn too much in the US. I'm rather like, well, we gotta do something that we get that much as well. Because I'm happy for them to earn that well. And Sonny Gold, did it already happen to me that both pilots fell asleep? No, not at all. I had a couple situations where the other pilot was resting and I started to, you know, become a little bit tired. In those situations, I just woke my colleague up and just told him, yeah, sorry, I'm getting tired as well now. And yeah, that's nothing that a coffee couldn't solve. And Pop, would I ever consider flying cargo? Honestly, I wouldn't mind. If there is a cargo job that would fit the lifestyle that I'm looking for, I absolutely would. It makes no difference to me as a pilot. Well, the only difference is probably that self-loading cargo can be hot and that's something good, while the non-self-loading cargo, if that gets hot, that's not a good thing at all. But really, it makes no difference. If someone would offer me a cargo job on a very good route network with very good working hours for a very good salary at the airport that's closest to home, yeah, I would take it. I absolutely would. And yeah, Pop, what lifestyle am I looking for in that case? Well, what I really like about my current job is that I'm flying tourists, and that means we fly into destinations that are very popular with tourists. That's where we do the layovers. We have beaches, we have, I'm not gonna say the other B word, we have very nice beaches, lots of cultural activities you can do near many of our destinations, a lot of variety of destinations. You have some where you can do lovely safaris. On other layovers, you're just going to spend a couple days at the beach. On other layovers, you are gonna go hiking. On other layovers, you are gonna go visit the Grand Canyon. So there's really a lot of variety there, and you just get to see so many parts of the world. That's what I really love about the job. And then of course you don't just fly somewhere and then fly back 24 hours later, but in my airlines we also have longer stops. For example, last year I was able to attend FS Expo while I was on a layover. We had a flight that fit absolutely perfectly, so obviously I took a couple pieces of chocolate, went down to the crew planning desk and told them like, hey, I would really appreciate this Las Vegas flight here, and I got it. So that's the kind of lifestyle that I'm looking for there. So not only go somewhere, then fly back 24 hours later, but also have a day or two of layover before you go back. I think the longest stop we have is actually 7 days, so that's pretty cool as well. But it's a very nice mix, and that's what makes the operation so interesting. You get to spend a good time at very nice destinations, you get to know the world. That's the kind of stuff I like about my current operator and about flying long haul. And yeah, pilot banner wave. At the moment there is no way how you can load a crashed flight again. And Alex, how much did it cost me to make it this far in my career? So, let me think about it. How much does it cost? Well, good question. Maybe before we get to that, just because I see it on the weather radar down here. Again, looking outside, there is, well, there may be a little bit of weather, so let's deviate a bit to the left. Now, how would we do that? First of all, you'd experiment with how far to the left do you actually want to go. So you can do this with the offset feature, and then let's say we want to go left by, let's experiment with it, 50 nautical miles. Now you can see it draws me this very nice line over here. So now what I would do is I would go down into CPDLC, ATC com, lateral request, offset, or actually let's do lateral request weather deviation up to 50 miles. Then it should ask me if I want to do that to the left or to the right. So let's see, can we actually type something like 50 left? Nah, okay. Well, I would add the direction of course as well, transfer to mailbox, and then send that. And now here's what I do when I get such a weather deviation. I don't go all the way to 40 or to 50 miles, but I'll leave it in the temporary flight plan, go to heading, and now I can vector myself up to those 50 miles. So now I can vector myself up to this distance from the planned route, and I can kind of navigate my own way around this weather. So that's how I would do this stuff, flying Oceanic. Looks like we might even need a little bit more than those 50 miles, so let's just erase that tempi down here. Create a new offset. Let's say I want to go left by 100 miles. Entry outer range. Interesting. The real one should be able to take that. Can't even take 99. Let's see, 80. Okay, there's something wrong here. It should take offsets that are more than 50 miles. Well, I'm just going to keep it in here like that. You get the idea of how we're doing this. And I'm going to report the actual 50-mile limitation to any builds. It should be more than that. The furthest I've done was some 200 nautical miles. And daher, would you recommend the Inibuild 350 to practice during the type rating? Yeah, I would. Just be aware that you are still using a personal computer game. It is very good to learn the SOPs and to practice all the operation with the FMS and stuff like that, but of course it isn't completely perfect. So just keep that in mind. Alright, and I think I am just gonna insert this. So insert tempi. Then I'll just fly it onto that line over here using heading mode. Just gotta make sure not to overshoot it since that's our ATC clearance now. And that's it. Now the walk, can a 4-inch 10 height fly an A330? Honestly, not 100% sure. If you fit onto the seat and can reach all the controls, yes, but I haven't tried that. I'm a little bit larger than that. Now, Wasim, would I consider the INI 350 study level? No, certainly not. It's very good for what it is, but not study level. So, Christoph, is there a scenario where we would use the fuel planning function in the fuel and load page? No, not really. You would just request a new operational flight plan from your company. Alright, so we're about to reach that new offset, so let's arm nav mode, nav blue. And that leads us nicely around the thunderstorms on the right there. Look at that, there is actually a little bit. And yeah, that's how we would navigate around a thunderstorm. So, what are you doing? Not intercepting the route, huh? Interesting. It should have done that. Look at that, it shows us 46 miles to the right of our route. That's not entirely correct. What's the inbound waypoint? 40 west, so that's ahead of us. There's something wrong here. Something is bugging around. Let's just go back to the offsets. Let's just pull the heading bug. Alright. Cancel offset. Oops, that was the wrong button. So, offset, cancel offset, insert. Now let's do that same thing again. Offset from present position to bungee. And we want a left offset by 50 miles. Insert, insert temporary. Does it fly it now? Let's see. Yeah, that looks better. That looks a lot better. Not sure what went wrong previously, but here we are. Flying nicely around the weather. That's all you can ask for. We've passed the second ETOPS entry point. Let's just go ahead and request the latest weather one more time. So, update all. Loches, still good weather conditions. And Pointe-à-Pitre has very good weather conditions as well. Perfect. So far so good. Easy going. Very easy going. That's how I like it. And that's exactly how you do such an Atlantic crossing, really. It's just so relaxed. So much nicer than flying short hauls. So much nicer. Especially once you get something delicious onto here. Okay, so Eugene, what do you do in order to stay in medical limits and requirements for C1? I'm not exactly sure what you mean with C1 there, but in general, you just you know, whenever I'm at a nice destination, you do have the gyms in the hotels, and that question came up earlier as well. Of course, the company provides the hotels. Food is a different story. You either get expenses. For instance, I believe in Las Vegas we get something like 70 or 80 euros or so per day to buy our own food. In other places, such as Punta Cana, you have an all-inclusive beach hotel, so yeah, there's your food. And no, we're not currently flying on VATSIM. So yeah, in order to maintain the medical, yeah, you do go to the gym, or whenever we're in a nice beach destination, honestly, I can't be bothered going to the gym, I go out playing beach volleyball. That's what I normally do, to stay active on those lovely Caribbean layovers. Or you can go out, have a walk or something the likes, that kind of stuff. And Pilot Banner Wave, I don't have a mod that makes the plane faster, but it has the option to use time acceleration built in. You can see we're running 4x simulation rate up here, and you can do that via Flight Ops menu, Options, Simulation, Time Compression, Automatic, and over here you can choose between 2x and 4x. And what I can very much recommend as well is to go to flightsim.to and download the Sim Time Rate Adjuster. That one makes the simulated time remain correct while you're running under acceleration. And that's how I do this. And Savage, how do you make the weather radar work? Quite simple. Press the WX button. And always remember, in order to activate the transponder before pushback, you go down here onto the surveillance page and you press the default settings button. Refer to my tutorials for details on how we do that. Also, let's go TCAS below down there. Yeah, and that's all you gotta do there. So, looks like we are slowly clearing of that weather. I am just gonna remain on the offset for a little bit until we are somewhere over here or so. And then we'll take that little gap down here, that black one, in order to get back onto our route. So that's my plan here. Dennis, how do we get the META from the destination airport? So that's quite easy. You go down on ATC.com, D8s, and you gotta ensure that your Hoppy code is entered in the settings. So that's under options and third party, I believe. Yeah, down here you gotta enter the Hoppy lock-on code. That's for free. Just Google for hoppy.nl. You can grab the free code over there, and then the airplane is able to fetch the metadata. So, then let's go back into the performance page, just monitoring for a step climb over here. So we can see that flight level 390 will be the optimum soon, but I want a little bit more margin to the recommended maximum here. 403 is a bit low. When that reaches something like 406, 407, that's when I'll probably go for a step climb to flight level 400. And Collimator79, hello Captain, are you satisfied with your AMD CPU? To be completely honest, not 100% sure yet. It still creates this audio popping every now and then. We could hear that on our departure. If you go back after the live stream to when I switched to the outside view, for instance, you could really hear the audio pop. And I haven't found a definite solution for that yet. But that's kinda... yeah, that's kinda something that still knocks me a little bit with my AMD. Apart from that, it's doing a superb job. It's even rendering videos faster when I edit them than the Intel used to do. So we're reaching a good point where we can go back to our normal route. Hoping that we are gonna make it through that black area over here. So let's go offset, right, 1, enter. Yeah, I tend to say that line looks pretty good there. And insert Tempe. Of course you would need ATC clearance for that kind of stuff, but since we're flying offline at the moment, that's not the issue. Someone asked earlier if we still communicate with air traffic control in the Oceanic sectors via voice radio. Well, only to check in, not thereafter. The rest is all via CPDLC. So you can see we're entering New York Oceanic over here at 40 West. That's the boundary we can see down here between Santa Maria and New York. Now, let's use that as an example of what you would do when you are calling a new air traffic controller. So basically, Santa Maria would have sent us a CPDLC message with the frequency. We might have already gotten that when we checked in over here. They might already have told us at 40 West, contact New York Radio HF 10596, for instance. Then we'd dial that in, we'd call them up, and the call would be something like New York Radio, what are we over here? Air Carib 40 Charlie, cell call check. That's it. Then you get your cell call, you reply, cell call okay, and that's it. Anything thereafter, CPDLC. That's so much nicer. So much nicer. than having to do this via voice. Even in Africa, they mostly have CPDLC nowadays. It's a really standard tool. Now, Federico, can you fly Oceanic with CPDLC inoperative? No, you cannot. You are not allowed to enter the North Atlantic high-level airspace without CPDLC. And Faustianisch, how common is CPDLC usage nowadays? Do most international airports have them? Airports not, because airports don't use CPDLC at all. But en route, yeah, pretty much everyone. All of Europe, pretty much all Oceanic FIRs in the world, Canada, the US is currently implementing it. Most African countries have it. Pretty much all of Asia. Yeah, you really have it almost everywhere nowadays. And Tom0172, is the A380 included in the A330 type rating like the 350 is? No, it isn't. And Gökay Öztürk, is there a way to save custom EO sets? No, not really. And Leo, I assume that the US doesn't use CPDLC, then how can you talk to, for example, New York Oceanic? So Oceanic is different. New York Oceanic has CPDLC, but the domestic US air traffic control, they are currently implementing it. They already have a lock-on. It's KUSA, Kilo Uniform Sierra Alpha. On the ground, you use that. You log on to KUSA, and then they send you your IFR clearance. That's what they use it for in the US at the moment. But they are slowly implementing it. I believe some US airlines are already running a CPDLC trial, but that's... I know that we don't, so... yeah. That's what I can tell you about that. And flying ATC, no, the A340 is not included in the 330 type rating either. It's only A330 and A350 that have a common type rating. The 340 has a different rating because it has more engines. And therefore they couldn't make it a common rating. However, it only requires a couple days of training to transition between the 330 and the 340. But the same is the case with the 350. You also got to do 4 simulator sessions of 4 hours each, so 16 hours in the simulator. But the difference is, for the 350 you don't need to do another check. For the 340 you have to do another check since it is a new type rating. Alright, we've overflown 40 degrees west. We forgot to do the fuel check, but that is not a problem at all, because if we go up here onto that speed out function, we go to estimated fuel on board and wind, and well, normally it should tell us up here at what time we passed 40 west and how much fuel we had. Looks like that's a bug. Gonna report that one. It should show us that. And the same of course goes for the inbound waypoint as well. Not sure why the data is missing here. That's a bug. Gonna report that after the live stream. Let me quickly take a screenshot. Here we go. Alright, so back to speed and altitude. Alright, so optimum 391, maximum 406. That sounds like a good point in time to request another step climb to flight level 400. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, hello there. Right. Let's just go vertical speed plus 1000. That's it. And we're climbing. A little bit less even, 700. To be sure that we're able to keep our speed. Okay, 500. Even easier. So, Adrian, when is top of descent? Once we finish the climb, I'll be able to show you. Just gotta pay a little attention here while I'm using vertical speed for the step climb, that our speed doesn't drop below green dot. That would not be good. You can see we don't have a lot of excess thrust available at these altitudes. Alright, alt cruise star. Alt cruise. And here we are, flight level 400. Easy going. And switch hyper. Yeah, I am 350 type rated even though we don't have A350s. That's because as soon as you get the 330 type rating, you're automatically type rated on the 350. It's a common rating. You have one, you have the other. So now, in regards to the top of descent, we have 1,319 miles to go. We're flying at 4x time acceleration. We can see down here that we now have 1439 in the sim. The TD is at 1720, so we're looking at 2 hours and 40 minutes. Divided by 4, so we're looking at roughly 20 minutes-ish? A little bit more maybe? Yeah, 30 minutes-ish. Until we start our approach preparation. 30 minutes to go. Alright. Flight level 400. And that's in the 1000. And a very heavy 1000 on top of that. I just really like this aircraft. Cloud Surfer, what are the preferred alternates for Frankfurt? The main one is Frankfurt-Hahn, because it's closest. But in practical terms, we would normally use either Düsseldorf or Stuttgart. So, let's just take a short moment here. Go back into the cabin. I just really like the cabin of the 350. They did an awesome job on that. So, I believe it's 12 Charlie that has the best wing view in the 350. So, Codeine, I have a question. How does ETOPS work? What is the meaning behind the rings that are shown on SimBrief? So basically, ETOPS means engines turning or passengers swimming. Well, not really. Extended diversion time operations is the real word for it. So that's the nice view, isn't it? That's a really nice one. Alright, so basically a normal passenger aircraft has to fly within 60 minutes from a suitable alternate airport. But aircraft and operators can get a license to fly further than those 60 minutes from an alternate airport. And then we enter ETOPS. Now, ETOPS actually is an outdated term. The current one is EDTO, Extended Diversion Time Operation, because it applies to 4-engine aircraft as well nowadays, and to 3 engines. And even the B-52 with its 8 engines has to apply to those rules if it operates under civilian rules. Not sure about the military. They probably do things different. They always do. So what are we doing then? An airline, or let's start with an airplane manufacturer, has to demonstrate that the airplane can operate safely without engine failures for a certain period in time. The airline has to demonstrate the same. And then you can get ETOPS approval. Normally, there are different levels of such approval. For example, we can normally get 120 minutes to the next airport, or 180 minutes, all the way up to 370 for the A350, which basically enables worldwide operation. And depending on the approval, those are the rings that you see. So for example, today we are operating under ETOPS 180. That means we can fly up to 180 minutes from the nearest suitable airport. And if we now take a look at SimBrief and take a look at the rings that we have over here, those rings, this one and this one, mark 180 minutes flying time from the respective ETOPS alternate airport. So by the time we pass this ring over here, if we turn around, it would take us 180 minutes to fly up to Lajes Airport. respectively, once we've passed this ring over here, it would take us 180 minutes to fly on to Pointe-à-Pitre. And that's basically what ETOPS is. Now, there's a lot of rules and regulations. Probably gonna do a different video explaining that in detail once any builds have actually implemented all the functions needed for this kind of operation. But yeah, that's ETOPS. Now, a question that I wanted to get back to earlier already that I forgot earlier on, sorry for that. Alpha Almao, hi A330 driver, how did you pay for pilot training? And someone else asked earlier, how much did I pay to get to this point in my career? So, I started doing my pilot training in a club, and I believe I paid around 10,000 to get the private pilot license. Then I did my hour building, and for that I mostly flew from my home airport back then around an hour and a half up to the East Frisian Islands in northern Germany. Very nice places in summer. You fly there in the morning, you fly back in the evening, you spend a nice day seaside. And that cost a bit of money as well, but since I could take friends along, we always shared the money, so I can't say how much I paid there. Probably another couple $1,000 to fly like 150 hours or so. After that, I went to commercial flight school and joined an ab initio course from the point after the PPL. So technically speaking, it was a modular training, but I kind of joined the course exactly from the point after the private pilot license. And that cost, don't let me lie to you, I believe 40,000 euros or something at that point. So now we're talking 50,000 and a bit. And then after that came the 737 type rating, which was, don't let me lie to you, I believe 5,000. But it was bonded for 5 years, so I paid those 5,000, and if I left within the first 5 years, I would have to pay up to 25,000 depending on the time where I leave to the airline. That's typical what they do, by the way. The same is the case in my current airline, where I didn't have to pay anything for my A330 type rating. The airline paid for it, but if I leave within the first 2 years, then I have to pay something back. That's quite normal what airlines do these days. Because type ratings are expensive. Well, and that's kinda it. So in the end, then we also have to pay for all the travel expenses. I believe we come up at somewhere around about 70,000 or so. 70,000, maybe 75,000. Something around that. Tyler Aviation 99, how is the distance of the inner ETOPS ring determined? That's the 60 minutes to the alternate ring, and those 60 minutes are with an engine inoperative, so at the single engine cruise speed. So if an engine fails, the speed that we would then fly in order to get to the alternate airport, typically some 420, 410 knots or so. Victor Flight Simulation, how do we do time compression? You can choose that option in the OIS. And just make sure that you download the sim time rate adjuster from flightsim.to so that your time actually progresses normally inside the sim. And Luca, yeah, I had to pay for that on my own. And Lockstar, you are right, type ratings are normally about 30,000 bucks, 30,000. I was simply lucky that at the time I finished my ATPL, Ryanair was in desperate need, so they offered that bonded scheme for 5,000. And then the other 25,000 were bonded. But a couple of weeks after that, they went back up to 30,000 already, so normally it's 30,000. And Toga Simulations, can we see the flap shake? Not in cruise, but you can see the engine shake down here. And Kyle, which was more difficult, the 737 or the A330 type rating? That's most definitely the 737, because that's an airplane where you just have to learn a shitload of stuff by heart. The 737 has like 10 different memory items, then you have all the maneuvers you gotta learn on top, and the Airbus basically has no memory items at all, because all the things that Airbus calls memory items, such as brake failure or GPWS activation, stick shaker activation, the Boeing calls that a maneuver, and you have to learn it by heart as well. So technically speaking, in the 737 you have like 20 memory items, on the A330 you have, I believe it's 7 or 8 of them. And on top of that, the Airbus is a more logical aircraft if you ask me. So the Airbus type rating was actually quite a bit easier than the Boeing type rating. Of course, I have to add that my 737 type rating was my first type rating after I finished flight school. That means I just had the basic pilot training, but no actual flight experience. Of course, when I did the A330 type rating, I had several years of experience on the 737, so it might just have been easier because it wasn't my first type rating, because I had all that on-the-job experience already. And Chris, do I prefer the 330-300 or the 330-900? Actually the 900, because it's more quiet and because everything is a little bit more advanced. It certainly is a superior aircraft. The Neo is certainly superior over the CO. That's out of question. And Jacob, how long did it take me to build ours? About a year and a half, but remember, I mostly flew on weekends, and then mostly flying, you know, with friends, either seaside or somewhere locally, so like that. And Anyana Tower, which ATPL subject did I find the hardest? For you it was performance. Either principles of flight or air law. Well, GNAF is a good contender as well. Let me explain to everyone watching, because we have 400 and a bit people watching at the moment, and most of them probably haven't heard all those abbreviations. So, let's start with principles of flight. That's basically where they explain you how all the physics work. But they don't just explain you how the physics work, you also have to do quite a bit of calculations. Like you have to calculate a turn radius, you have to calculate that kind of stuff. And I didn't like the mathematical element of that, because it would be rather irrelevant to the job. It's a good idea that you know how many miles of a turn radius do you need at a certain speed, but I can learn those figures by heart. I don't need the formula. And that's principles of flight. Very, very interesting subject, but a lot of learning required, and probably the most physics. Then you have GNAV, or General Navigation. That's also a lot of calculations, because they make you calculate all those transatlantic flight plans manually. You gotta be able to calculate the exact courses along a Great Circle course everywhere, and all that kind of stuff. So again, a lot of mathematics that you wouldn't really need later on. Again, GNAV also has a lot of interesting topics included, but yeah, also a lot of mathematics, which I didn't really like. Well, then there's air law, and air law simply is, well, learn stuff by heart. I don't like learning stuff by heart. So, yeah, that's air law. Taher, you hate meteorology. That's interesting. That was actually my favorite. I like meteorology best because that's the environment in which we are operating. And you really get to use quite a bit of that in flight. I found that most interesting, personally. And Tom0172, can you cheat on your logbook when flying for hours? Well, theoretically, people probably wouldn't notice if you make up some hours, but if that ever comes out, chances are you're not only going to lose your job, you'll also end up in jail. So, yeah, up to you if you want to cheat in there. And Pilot Bannerwave, what was the hardest part of flight school? For me, it was the theoretical exam, because you really want to get everything right on the first attempt. And airlines want to see good results. So in order to get your first job, you really want an average of 90%. You need 75% to pass. But you really want to get those 90%. And you also want to do them all in one go. You can split the different topics. So you could just, you know, you could do your theoretical training, then learn for a couple of months, practice those questions, then go to the authority and do only 6 of the 12 topics, or is it 14 by now? Let's just say you only do half. Then, if you pass those first 6, you could go back, learn for another 6 months, and then do the other half. You have 18 months to pass all the subjects, either 12 or 14 or something the likes. And Anja Nena, EASA is still 13 plus KSA, yeah, so let's say 14 topics. And Metal Eye, thank you very much. So yeah, that's some 14 topics. You have 18 months for that. So theoretically speaking, you could split the topics. But airlines don't like that. Airlines want to see that you're able to pass everything in one go, because it tells them a lot about your mental capacity and about your learning capacity. So therefore, you really want to do those 14 topics all in one go. And then you also want to get a very good score. And yeah, for me that was the hardest part of the training, getting that theoretical exam right. The practical stuff, for me, as someone who's been using flight sims for a lot at that time, for me the practical training was the greatest fun. And not difficult at all, to be honest. Was very, very interesting, but not difficult. So, Jan, from where to where are we flying? We're going from Paris-Orly to Pointe-à-Pitre. And Jan, yes, it is possible that I'm German, but I'm not going to answer the part about the airline. And Chris, can I say if I like another company's livery, or is that impacted by my airline's policy? Oh, I can absolutely say that, and I do like the Air Caribe over here very much. I really like this livery. It's one of the most beautiful, if you ask me. Really, one of the most beautiful around the world. And Cloud Surfer, yeah, it certainly is hard to pass the theoretical exam. It's a lot of learning. And Jacob, do I think flight colleges are worth it over getting individual licenses at a local airport? Maybe yes, maybe no. It really depends on what you want to do. If you just want to get into a cockpit as quick as possible, just go to one of those commercial flight schools. It's quickest, it's good quality training. Absolutely do that. But if you have some time available, then perhaps consider doing license by license in a local club, because it's going to save you money. It's going to save you a lot of money. I easily saved some 20 to 30,000 euros by doing the PPL in a club. So it cost me 2 years, but in those 2 years I was lucky enough to work for Aerosoft back in the day, so yeah, for me it was worth it. Okay, so a lot of very nice wing looking, but let's make our way back to the flight deck and see where we are and how far we still have to go. Beautiful cabin, isn't it? I really think Inibuilds did a great job on that. But look at this. The fasten seatbelt sign is on here, isn't it? I do believe we have it off in the cockpit. Let's go ahead and have a look at that. Otherwise, we might just have found a bug. Now, Jan, in regards to saying which airline I fly for, the problem here is, my airline has a social media policy that allows you to say where you fly, but if you officially identify as an employee of that airline, then you have to comply with the entire rest of the airline's social media policies on that social media presence. And part of my airline's social media policies are that you are not allowed to talk about disasters, for example. So I could talk about any crash or anything the likes. And there are a couple other restrictions that I'm not very happy about, and for this reason I do not publicly identify as an employee of the airline, so that I don't have to follow their social media codex on my channel. For example, I would not be allowed to demonstrate any aircraft voices. Therefore, I would have to mute the simulator sound. Or at least that's my interpretation of it. So for this reason, I'm not saying which airline I fly for. And Flyjet, which cockpit do I like more, 737 or A330? Easily A330. Much larger, much more space. They build it with the pilot in mind. The 737? Yeah, Boeing built a great aircraft, and then they remembered they had to put pilots in it. The same goes for cabin crew, by the way. Ask a cabin crew who flies the 737 and different types what they like best. They will not say 737, I can tell you that much. So, Bertrand, hello, have you experienced crashes to desktop due to WASM bugs since the latest update? No, I didn't. And Aviation Boy, am I using default airports or payware? I'm mostly using payware. Now, FS 2024 actually has a couple of very good default airports included as well. Think, for example, Paris Charles de Gaulle, which is pretty good. Los Angeles is as well. But, for example, for Paris Orly and for our destination Pointe-à-Pitre, I'm using third-party. Jetstream Designs for Paris and SLH Sim Design for Pointe-à-Pitre. And Hasso Basso, I think an extra important reason for privacy is that there are people out there who are mentally ill. Flight Deck to Sim had a guy showing up at his base and another one doxing him. Oh yeah, had that as well. One guy did actually email my my fleet captain and said some pretty harsh things, but I had a very good laugh with my fleet captain thereafter. He just asked me about why did I get that email, and I was like, oh yeah, that's gotta be a stupid Reddit boy. And we had a very good laugh about it. But yeah, that stuff happens as well. So, I want to try one more thing. We've just overflown another waypoint while we've been in the wing view. And I want to go to EFOB winds, and look at that. If we've overflown the waypoint, it actually saves the time at which we were there and the fuel on board. It didn't do that when we came back from our offset on the previous point, but over here it actually does. So, let's see, 1554, that's around 6:12, so 18 minutes. So we had 6 hours and 5 flight time, 16.9 fuel. That was at 50 west. Well, 6 hours 9 versus 6 hours 7, very good. 14.9 versus 16.9, so we saved a little bit of fuel, which makes sense since we were planned to be here in flight level 380. As you can see up here, and we are in flight level 400, so we are saving a little bit of fuel here. And Chris, have we ever been to Madagascar virtually? There is a new Emirates route with the 777-300ER. Is there a good airport available there? Is there a good add-on available? If yes, then we'll probably consider it for a future. Now, Flying Barbarian, how long is this flight normally? Around 8 hours. And then, in order to move around in my cockpit, I'm just using the simulator's internal controls. So in FS 2024, that's Shift WASD to move around, like this. And yeah, the mouse to look around. That's how I'm doing that. And Chris, yes, FMMI by Vuelo Simple. I'll look into it. And TX Liner, hello Captain, how much do airlines look on your grades? On the grades at school, not so much. On the grades at flight school, very much. At least for the first job. For the second and third and so on, they just do their own assessments. And Hustle Basso, yes, the de-icing procedure for the A350 is more or less identical to the 330. And Eugene, there is a Southwest Airlines captain on YouTube who used to talk a lot about his job on public maintaining all the policies up until the point where some ill dude literally sent a lot of shit to Southwest. Now he's not doing it any longer. Yeah, that sounds about like it. I remember one Scandinavian A330 captain who did very, very good videos as well. And I believe due to some idiots on the internet, that guy actually got fired at Scandinavian. So, yeah. The internet is a strange place at times. And Andy, am I from Germany? Ja, das bin ich. Now, Cesar Beato, would I go back to Boeing if given the opportunity? No. I just think the Airbuses are better designed for pilots. So, first of all, I have a lot of space in front of me here where Boeing would put a big fat yoke. Then I have this, which is just awesome. Just really, really awesome. The table is so much of a help. Just imagine, in the Boeing, when you have the yoke in front of you, what you do in order to be able to eat is you have to put a tablet down on your knees and eat from that. Or if you don't get a tablet, you gotta use the tech lock. That's what we did in my previous company. Now, no. Just no, I don't want to do that. I just really don't want to do that. The Airbus is just designed as a much better workplace than anything that Boeing has on offer at the moment. Also, it's much more quiet. Imagine, you're sitting on the A350 over here doing an 8-hour flight, and you don't have to wear the headset because the plane is rather quiet. If you did the same flight in a 777, you would be wearing a headset for 8 hours at a time in order not to permanently lose your hearing. No. Airbus is so much better. So much more pilot-minded. I prefer that over Boeing any day. And that really has nothing to do with, you know, side stick versus yoke, fly-by-wire, complete control like you have it on Airbus versus what Boeing does on the 777. Or having thrust detents, having auto thrust move the thrust levers. That's stuff that flight simmers talk about. Honestly, as a pilot, I don't care. What I care about is sitting in the aircraft and how is the time that you spend on board? And in these terms, Airbus easily wins. I really don't care about different philosophies, and, you know, the Boeing philosophy is good, the Airbus philosophy is good, I don't care. But the Airbus is the better office. And ultimately, if you're sitting in here for, you know, 8 hours flight time, plus 20 minutes taxi, plus an hour and a half preparing for the flight, yeah, if I sit in here for 11 hours, then I want the most comfortable one. And Chris, is it true that talking with Italian air traffic control can be challenging? Oh yeah. Just like Spanish air traffic control, and in the lower airspace, often French air traffic control. Heavy accents, basic English. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that you gotta live with on those flights. And in some cases, think for example Palermo, they have a very, very bad comm and it has a lot of background noises, no. That can be pretty hard, yes. All of it is doable. And honestly, in the real world, barely any is as bad as it appears on live ATC so many times. But yeah, it happens. Cloud Surfer, can I do a brief explanation of the different Airbus laws? Yeah, absolutely. So normal law basically maintains your flight path, very basically said, and protects you against banking too much, pitching too much. It provides basic protections. Alternate law does the same, but with fewer protections. Then you have alternate 2, which again does the same, but with even fewer protections. And then you have direct law. In direct law, the aircraft is still steered normally, but you also have to trim the aircraft manually. In the 350, you have a trim switch down here, pitch trim. And then you have mechanical backup, where you only have the trim and the rudders working. It is possible to land the aircraft like that, but it is intended only to keep you in the air long enough that you can at least restore some basic flight controls. And Jonathan, how about Caribbean ATC? To be honest, they are quite a bit better than some of the Southern European ones. And Avcik Sealers, am I scared about cosmic radiation at all, especially as a long-haul pilot who barely moves in 8 hours and flies quite high quite often? Yeah, I am. Well, not scared, but I know the effects that radiation can have. And it is a risk that comes with a job. As someone who went long-haul, I accept that risk, and I know that on long-haul flights you are exposed to radiation a lot more than if you're flying short-haul. But yeah, it comes with a job. I know that I'm going to die maybe a year or 2 sooner because of the radiation. Yeah. On the other hand side, I get a good buck for the job. And which job comes without risks? So radiation is one. It has an effect. For instance, there's been a study that pilots typically have a 60% chance of getting a daughter rather than a son. And that's most likely due to the radiation as well. So, yeah, it is there. It has its effects. You know about that, you learn that in flight school, and you either accept it or not. I decided to accept it. And Yunyan Yap, best ATC in the world. I would say probably the British. I think the Brits are the best. The Germans are good as well. Northern Europe is pretty good as well. The US is good as long as they don't talk in a speed where you don't understand them any longer. And home email, yeah, I kinda put the Brits a little bit above the Germans and the Dutch, because they just have a little bit better understandable accent. Now the Dutch and the Germans are understandable as well, no doubt about it. They speak good English, but the Brits are just a bit easier to understand because it's their native language, in my opinion. And Medley, hopefully I'll get a daughter one day instead of a flight simmer. That's gonna be costly. Yeah. And flying ATC, but the Brits let you fly heading along your route. That's true, but that way I can anticipate when I'm going to get a turn. That's nice, isn't it? And JLVP, can you explain what the VV next to the ILS stands for? Yeah, that's the vertical velocity. That's basically the bird. What you know from older generation Airbus aircraft as the bird is the VV, vertical velocity. I believe on the A350. And Jan, can I do a German stream or video at some point? Honestly, I'm not sure about that, because Germans make about 10% of the viewers of my channel, and the remaining 90% wouldn't understand it, and it would not feel right to me to do a stream for only 10% of the audience. And let's be honest over here, Germans know English pretty well. You can understand what I'm doing here, so that's why I kinda prefer to do it that way. Ich hoffe, das macht Sinn so. And Konali, does the 350 still have rudder in mechanical backup? Yeah, it depends on how you wanna call it. Basically, it does have the rudder in mechanical backup, but it is operated electrically, that's correct. And Chebas85, if a passenger asks to see the cockpit, do you let them? Yeah, on the ground, always. Provided there's time available. Usually there is. And the best time is to ask as early as possible. Because that way, if we are busy, then we can say, yeah, just come back later. So, Tom0172, are there any study materials for free for independent learning, and is there a public exam for the ATPL? To be honest, there is a lot of good information on Skybrary, and there's a lot of good information available out on the internet, but I don't think there's any real study materials, no. Those come at a couple $1,000, unfortunately. It is what it is. Can't really change that, unfortunately. And Apollo, will I ever make a real-life flying vlog? Probably not, because first of all, we would quickly be at the point of identifying which airline I fly for, and secondly, because it's not the kind of style of the content of this channel. Now, opening a second channel for that doesn't really sound that appealing to me. I'm pretty happy with the flight sim content that I do, and yeah. And Empathy Osco, no, we are not flying on VATSIM at the moment, because there is so much traffic on the Atlantic in VATSIM at the moment, and I wanted to use time acceleration and not have to monitor TCAS all the time, like the Code of Conduct requires you if you are using time acceleration. For that reason, I preferred to fly it offline. Now, Yavi, what's the best airport for me in terms of delays and air traffic control? A place in Africa. The problem is, if I name that place, you immediately know which airline I fly for. But we're like the only ones who go into there, so you get anything and everything you want. And they don't care. We are the ones who basically finance the entire airport, so yeah, you get whatever you are asking for, and probably more. I flew a couple of absolutely lovely visual approaches down there. Oh boy, we're already getting close to the top of descent. That was a quick flight. That was really quick flight. Well, I suppose we've got no choice then, huh? And Empathy Osco, no, please don't guess the airline. Ian Jackson, keep up the good work, Emmanuel. I watch your videos daily. Missed your live streams once. I even go back and re-watch them sometimes. You helped me learn how to fly the PMDG 737 and 777 and Inibils 330. Love to hear it, Ian. That's exactly the idea behind the channel, so thank you so much. And I think that's a very good point to start going into the arrival preparation. So we're pretty close to the destination already. Let's turn off our auto time compression here. And let's see what we're up to. 100 nautical miles from the top of descent. We're still on the offset right now, but as you can see, we are still in the Oceanic part as well. So we kind of could switch back and cancel the offset already, or we could keep flying offset for a little bit. But since we must no longer be offset when we reach domestic ATC, let's just take it out right now. So, offset, cancel, insert, and back to the center line. Okay, so, Nico, what does ID mean on the EFIS? It basically means that you have traffic including the aircraft's identification, so including the call sign, and I believe the ground speed as well. And DPAC, yes, this is 1.0.2. Alright, so let's start collecting our weather. In terms of airports, let's see, where is our alternate list? Here it is. So Barbados and of course Fort de France. So let's start setting up our ATIS here. So we are looking for TFFR, and we want the arrival ATIS of that one. Then we are looking for TFFF, and we are also looking for Tango Bravo Papa Bravo Barbados. Alright, and update all. So, very good weather at our destination. Scattered 3.8, broken 4.8, broken 7,000. 28 degrees, QNH 1014. So let's pre-select 1014 up here and down here. Wonderful. Then, Fort de France, light rain, but good weather. Typical Caribbean weather. You have light rain showers, but that's just going to be some small showers that are going to move through very, very quickly. And yeah, Barbados is good as well. So overall we have very good weather conditions. Now we've got to decide on the type of approach that we're actually going to fly, and this is where you guys are going to come into play. So let's go ahead and see what you guys think about the type of approach that we are going to fly. It's going to be runway 02, that's for sure. And let me see if I can actually create a little poll in here. Of course, I haven't done that on YouTube just yet, but yeah, let's do a poll. So, which approach in a PTP? We have an ILS, we have an RNAV, and we have a visual. Now, let me see what you guys are gonna say about this. So, you can vote in the comments now, and you can tell us which approach we are actually going to do. Let me show you, in the meantime, on the charts over here. So, TFFR, search. So, the options are either the ILS approach, which is this one over here. I can tell you, it's quite a beautiful approach coming in over the mountains over here. Then, we have an option for an RMP approach into runway 12, which is more or less the same. And finally, we have an option for a visual approach. Now, be sure to vote, and ultimately, I will go with whatever you guys decide on. But it looks like the visual is actually having the most votes right now at 50%, followed by 39% for the RNAV approach. 128 votes already given. Be sure to keep voting for the next minute or two. And Nico, can we check if we have an LPV minima for the RNAV approach? We don't. It's LNAV VNAV. Let me check the other one, the RMP Yankee. Nope, that's only LNAV VNAV as well. Striking score. Democracy at work. Exactly. And Chris, if you have an ILS available, why would a pilot choose an RNAV approach? Only for training purposes. ILS just is the most favorite approach. So if that's available, that's what you use. Unless you just want to practice doing one of the other approaches again, it is a good idea to do those every now and then you could certainly do that as well. Alright, so we've got to start preparing, and the visual approach has actually won at 49%. So the visual wins this one. We are going to fly a visual approach. But no worries guys, I will do an RNAV approach on the next one then. So let's go ahead and start setting it up. The good thing about the visual is that you actually don't need to do all that much. So most importantly, we gotta set ourselves up to be at a good altitude for our arrival. Basically, I want to fly the aircraft onto 3 to 4 nautical mile final. We could also do 2 miles, but let's do 3. So from Desto over here, we gotta fly somewhere down here. So that's around 11 miles, plus the 3 miles on the final. So if we want to be here on 3 miles and 1,000 feet fully stabilized, we might need around 5 miles to lose our speed. That leaves us with 6 miles after Desto. 6 miles equals 2,000 feet, so if we plan Desto in 3,000, that should bring us into a very good position for the approach. We do have a couple altitude restrictions of 3,600 though, so we might not be able to enter 3,000 at... We might not be able to enter 3,000 at Desto, but we can enter 3,600, and that's what I'm going to do. So let's see, Desto, altitude, at or below, 3,600. Enter. And Tempe, insert. Now let's see where the top of descent is. 6 miles. That's early. Don't quite believe that. No, I definitely don't believe that. That would mean, with the 30 knot headwind... Well, that doesn't make sense. Alright, I'll tell you what. Let's just go direct to bungee again. Often entering a direct is going to reset the VNAV calcs. But I'll tell you what, we should be with domestic ATC by now, so let's just go direct to BOSAT. You can give me any beam point for that, please. Insert. So let's see where the top of descent is actually gonna end up now. Looks like it's actually right here. Alright, in that case, starting the descent. Initially flight level 200 or something the likes. First descent, descent, alt, flight level 200 blue. Okay, so, apart from that, we don't really need to enter all that much. So let's just get the weather up on the right side. Then we can enter... Ooh, very interesting speed profile, 0.78 and 240. Well, now I know why the VNAV profile was so shallow. Well, we are gonna fly some faster than that, that's for sure. I can probably not change it anymore in once the descent is actually active, but yeah, we'll just leave it at that, that's fine with me. So, for the approach page, the wind is 090 at 9. Temperature 28 and QNH 1014. We don't need any minimums since we are flying visual. And landing config full so that we can minimize our approach speed over here. Position monitor. You are gonna go on to Tango Fox Fox Romeo 12. And then on to the go around. Engine out acceleration. Let's see what the MSA is. Around Desto 1600. Yeah, that's fine. So 1600 is going to be our engine out acceleration altitude. And here we go. So that good stuff is in here. Alright. So, that's our FMS preparation already finished. Not much more that we need to do. So let's go over to the plan and bring up our ANF, Airport Navigation function, so that we can arm brake to vacate. It's a small airport, should load rather quickly, and here it is. So, runway 12, select landing runway, then we can zoom in a little bit. And we plan to vacate over here on Echo, so let's select the exit just prior to that. In this case, that's exit Echo, 2,500 meters down the runway. Alright, auto brake armed, BTV blue, that's it. Okay, beautiful. So that's our approach preparation already completed. I just love how easy it is. And wow, guys! I'm not looking at the chat for a few moments because I'm preparing my approach and I see iFlySimX. Hey Clement, nice to see you. Gifting 2 memberships. Thank you so much, my friend. And Guido has gifted 5 memberships as well. Wonderful. So, welcome to all the new members. Welcome, my friends. Alright then, so we have completed our approach preparation. Now, how much longer do we have to fly? ETA is 17:52, so around, 25 minutes. Let's quickly say bye-bye to our guests then, before doing the briefing. Mesdames et messieurs, from the flight deck, this is your captain speaking. We have started our descent to Pointe-à-Pitre and the remaining flight time is now about 25 minutes. The weather at our destination currently 28 degrees Celsius with a few clouds. Would like to thank you very much for choosing Air Caraïbes for today's flight. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And we look forward to welcoming you again on board of a future scheduled service. Thank you very much for your attention, thank you for choosing us today, and we wish you a nice and safe continuous journey, if applicable, loving and unforgettable memories in your holidays, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you very much for your attention, and we wish you a nice and safe continuous journey. Alright, I'm back on the radios, and Clément gifted another 2 memberships. Thank you, Clément. Thank you so much. So, Empathy Osco, can you do the approach briefing with you? Absolutely. So, let's go ahead and have a look at that. The pilot monitoring starts the briefing again. And the pilot monitoring basically takes a close look at the flight plan and verifies what the plan of the pilot flying is. So the pilot flying enters his plan in the FMS, then the pilot monitoring checks that, and now starts with what the pilot monitoring understood from the plan of the pilot flying, and that goes as follows. So we are flying the Bowsat 2 Alpha arrival towards Desto for a visual approach into runway 12. MSA 1,600 feet, and since it's a visual we don't have any minimal. For the go-around we're going to follow the published go-around of the ILS Zulu approach. In terms of extra fuel and time, we have 3.6 tons, which equals 42 minutes. When that is done, the pilot flying takes over and then confirms the actions that he has planned, but that he cannot pre-select in the FMS, and that goes as follows. So, we will fly a visual approach without the flight directors and with the vertical velocity on. Landing config full, stop margin should already have been calculated at this point, so let's just go synchronize FMS, synchronize stop margin, brake mode medium, landing config full, and I like to take some 5 knots of margin here. Alright, reversers yes, compute. So stop margin 1081 meters. Reversers will be used and auto brake BTV to vacate via Echo. No hotspots for the taxi in, and in terms of special operations, we are doing a visual approach here. We are going to enter the visual at the base, so when we're about 5 miles out, then we want to go we want to configure the aircraft, and at 3 miles we need to be fully configured. In order to revise the rules for the visual approach, the aircraft needs to be stabilized on the final approach track vertically and horizontally by 500 feet. And by 1000 feet we need to have completed the landing checklist, and the aircraft needs to be fully stabilized in terms of configuration. With the landing checklist completed. I have nothing non-standard for today, and I don't really see any threats. To be honest, the only threat there is the one that we can see, and therefore it is no threat. That's of course the terrain going up to 4,366 feet down here in the south. So on this part in the approach, theoretically we have an MSA of 6,500, but since it is a visual, we gotta be visual with the runway anyway, otherwise we couldn't fly this. Alright, and that's everything there is to it. Alright, cool. That's the briefing. There really isn't much more to do about this. So let's go ahead with the descent checklist. Oh, sorry, the approach checklist down to the line, please. Briefing, confirmed, minimum. There is none. Visual approach. Approach checklist completed, down to the line. And that's how we do it. Wow, going back into the YouTube app here. Charlie, thank you so much for the £5 donation. And Metal Eye, thank you so much for gifting those 5 memberships. Really much appreciated. Really, really much appreciated. Thank you. Alright. Pilot banner wave, how do you find baro on your charts? With that you're referring to the minimum, right? So, the one down here, the barometric minimum, that's located in those boxes down here. So, the A350-1000 is category Delta aircraft, the 900 is a Cat Charlie, and then, well, if we were to fly an ILS Cat 1, you would use 260 down here. And that would require a cloud ceiling of 260 feet and 1,300 meters visibility. That's how you can read this. And that's what you would enter down there. Alright then, let's continue our descent, and we'll go down to 10,000 next. And that's what we have here. Now, New George XCI, I have a question. Did you have a problem with the holding in the A350? No. I did one holding only with it so far, but that worked without any problems. And Javi, these charts are the Lido charts that come with Flight Simulator 2024. You could also use the Navigraph charts. Same. Really. Navigraph offers Jefferson charts, and FS 2024 has Lido charts, so Lufthansa system charts included by default. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the Lufthansa system charts. Always been. Really wish Navigraph would offer them as well, together with their excellent app, because the Navigraph app is just unbeatable. But yeah, it is what it is. Alright, so the minimum radar vectoring chart is also a very good one always. You can see Desto up here, and that area marked over here has 2,000 feet as our minimum radar vectoring altitude. That's usually a very good idea to find like the best possible spot that you can safely fly to at a certain altitude. So within this sector Juliet down here, 2,000 feet is the lowest that we can safely fly to. Tryon Mazumdar, a lot of people and even a lot of your fellow pilots have been speaking negatively about the realism and system depth of the Inbuilt A350. Can you share your opinion? Okay, I think that a lot of the negativism we see comes from two parts. Number one, the simple fact that this is not Phoenix. Phoenix has a huge amount of fanboys, and with that I'm just referring to the fanboys, not to Amir or any of the Phoenix crew. And those fanboys just can't stand when there is something, let's say, similar. You can see those same fanboys hating on PMDG, and now they have INI builds with also a good Airbus, not Phoenix level of system depth for sure, but a good one. And therefore those people start hating on it just naturally. They just do, without any real reason to understand behind it. And then there is the second reason, that's the price of the add-on. So I think there is no doubt that the INI 350 is a very expensive add-on. And it is very hard to judge if the price is justified. For me personally it is. But that is because I lived through the P3D times. Back then, a Flight Simlabs Airbus cost 150 euros. A PMDG 777 cost 130 euros. And I was happy to pay that, because I know what I can get from those add-ons. I know what I can do with them. With the 350, for example, it is not study level. There's no doubt about it. It is not study level. But it enables me to fly a normal A to B flight using realistic standard operating procedure, and all of that while it features pretty much all of the things that an A350 pilot would use. So, not study level, but it has everything that you would use on a normal A to B flight. And that's pretty cool. And that is what 99% of the flight simmers are actually looking for. The 350 is an incredibly complex aircraft, much more complex than an A320 or a Boeing 777. Therefore, if we ignore the price for a moment, if the aircraft was modeled with the same amount of developer hours put into it as a PMDG 777, then you would naturally get a lower level of system depth on the A350 than you would on a 777. Therefore, if you want the same level of system depth, you gotta invest more time, and therefore it's going to become more expensive. Now, as I mentioned, there is no doubt that the INI 350 is not at the same level of system depth as the PMDG 777 or the Phoenix Airbus. So, the question that we've all got to ask ourselves is that level of system depth that we get, which in my opinion covers the vast majority of what flight simmers are going to do with the aircraft, but not study level. Especially in terms of failures, it still has its problems and limitations, but we gotta ask ourselves, is that worth the asking price? To me, it is, but hey, I earn an airline pilot salary. For me, spending those 90 euros is not as bad as it is for, a student. So I can totally understand if there are people who say no, it's not worth the money asked. And I can understand why some of the people who actually bought the aircraft who wanted to buy the aircraft, let's put it that way. Some of the people who wanted to buy the aircraft were disappointed because they couldn't afford it at the price at which INI Builds released it. And I can totally understand why those people might now go on the internet and tell other people about their frustration. So, I do understand that. However, personally, I think looking at the amount of hours that I'm spending with it, looking at the amount of fun I'm having with it, to me it is worth the money. But again, that's a decision that everyone has to make on their own. Alright, and now let's see if I created another shitstorm on Reddit. And with that, let's continue the approach. So, let's go down to 3,600 and set QNH. So I'm also quickly going to do weather update. And Harley Davidson Street Bob, thank you so much for the €5 donation. Thank you so much for all the great knowledge that you share with us. It's highly appreciated. Gonna do Munich to Tokyo in my 350 now. It's a great plane. I do fully agree on that. Alright, so latest weather 09089 281014. Perfect. So let's just put that wind into the approach page. 09089 is in there. Perfect. Alright, so QNH 1014 cross check passing 9200 now. So passing 10,000, lights on, signs on. Now the weather is good, we've seen that. We can see that. So let's go over to terrain. Since that is the greater threat on this arrival, and then we'll also activate the bird, and that's it. Alright, approach checklist below the line, please. Barrel ref, QNH 1014. Approach checklist complete. Aviation sound expert, how do you get real ATIS like you got in Dubai? That was from VATSIM. If there was a controller online over here in VATSIM, then we would get the VATSIM ATIS down here. But since there is no controller online at the moment, we get the METAR. That's how AnyBuilds programmed it. And Eugene has gifted 5 memberships. Thank you very much, Eugene. Thank you. That's really appreciated, my friends. That's really, really appreciated. Alright, so let's see. The runway is probably over here, so just behind the clouds. Once we can actually see it, I'll disconnect the automatics and then we'll go down for the visual approach. For the time being, let's just continue inbound to Desto. And Pedro, Lido charts are only available in FS 2024, right? Yes, right. That's a feature of the new sim. It's one of the funny things. People so often say like, yeah, what does the new simulator actually offer? It looks the same like FS 2020. Well, apart from the fact that I don't agree that it looks the same, especially the atmosphere is a lot better, it offers things such as Lido charts, such as the A330, the A321 LR, the A400. You know, that's all features of the sim as well. And Aviation Sound Expert, will I stream regularly again? I hope so, but there are a couple open points right now. I'm moving closer to my new home base in a couple weeks' time, and yeah, I'm not 100% sure about the internet connection there, because I'm going into a temporary full-serviced apartment there, while I'm searching for a flat that I can buy close to the airport. So not 100% sure if the internet connection will be good enough to do live streaming. I do hope so. Alright, so over there is the airport. We have everything in sight. Let's go visual. Autopilot off. Auto thrust off. Flight director off. Why is the plane turning? Don't turn. Alright, extend the center line, please. Direct 2. TFFR 12. Course in. 115 looks about correct. Insert. Alright, so 2000 is the MSA over here. Suppose then we can use 2000 as a missed approach altitude as well. And then let's turn inbound. I'm gonna keep the airplane away from the coast here. We don't want to annoy any of the holiday makers, otherwise we're just hurting our own business. So we are like 17 miles out, 3,000 feet, 250 knots. Let's activate the approach phase and start decelerating. So activate and confirm. By the way, this is one of the reasons why I just absolutely love flying to the Caribbean. Those visual approaches you can do there, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Can't do that anywhere else in the world. Though I have to say the US have some nice visuals as well.
2,500.
Checked. So the field elevation is 0. Let's go down to 1500 at first, level off over there. Then we can also set our runway track. Let's see, aerodrome ground chart. Runway track 116. Here we go. So, we don't want to fly over that island over here. Let's go a little bit to the left of it, in order not to cause any noise issues. We'll just go in between the two islands. So, reaching green dot speed, going down to 1500. And empathy Osco. No worries, I know that I'm rather low. Doing that on purpose here, because I want to get the aircraft into a good position for the visual approach. So 1500, that's pattern altitude, flaps 1. Now let's bring it down to 180 knots. And let's quickly check why my throttles are acting a little bit strange. Option, throttle calibration. Oh yeah, look at that. So, that's idle. Thanks, now they're behaving quite a bit better. Alright, quickly had to fix my throttle while flying a visual approach, yeah. That's how accidents happen. So, 180 knots, 1500 feet. That's how you can establish on a nice final. Now, we gotta aim for 3 nautical miles in 1000 feet. How do we do that? Well, 3 miles is just outside that ring over here. So I'm just flying past the little island down here, and then we'll go on to an exact base. And then we'll start to configure the aircraft. And look at this. Again, that's FS 2024. 2020 wouldn't look remotely as good as this. Alright, so we can start our descent. Then, flaps 2, gear down. Missed approach altitude, 2000 is set. Okay, flaps 3, speed check, flap 3, flaps full, speed check, flaps full. Landing checklist. Cabin crew, advised, auto thrust, off. Auto brake, BTV, runway condition, dry, landing checklist complete. So we're at 1000 feet, 2 miles from center line. There's our landing runway down there.
1,000.
Check. Come on, speed, what are you doing? Adding a bit of thrust here. Alright, let's start turning final. So, you really just fly this with reference to the outside now. Poppy shows 2-2, 2 whites, 2 reds, perfect. And the extended centerline should be somewhere over here, so let's just fly the airplane onto that very spot. All of that while maintaining a good rate of descent here, 700 feet a minute.
500.
And here we are. So... here we are, established on the final. And we're going through 500 now. The radio altimeter was a bit early there due to some hills, so we are fully established, fully configured. The wind is changing direction a little bit here. That's why I'm just accepting the speed deviation and the thrust setting we have right now. Now it's coming back.
200. 100.
No.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5.
Alright. Spoilers, reverse green, BTV. And decel. Alright, animals on the left. Let's bring the engines out of reverse here, just in case one of those animals runs into them. Alright, that's looking okay. And manual brakes. And here we are. Vacating the runway. That was a beautiful flight, wasn't it? And I just totally love those visual approaches. And yeah, guys, for those of you asking why there are animals over there, honestly, that happens in the Caribbean. There's so many reports of dogs running onto the runways and stuff like that. That's normal over here. That's just... yeah, that happens. So, let's tidy it up. And then we'll taxi to the parking spot. Let's actually get the parking chart out as well. Make sure that we don't get too fast, because we are very light right now. That's one of those things flying long haul. When you taxi out, the airplane behaves completely different than when you are... The airplane behaves completely different than it does after landing, because there's a weight difference of some 50 tons or so. Really notable. Okay, so we're looking for parking spot number 8 Bravo over there. Or just number 8 most likely. So, GSX menu. Gate 8, and I don't care if you think that's too small, we are gonna take it anyway. Alright, after landing checklist. After landing checklist complete. Okay, so not this one, but the next one. Taxi light off. And then we go off to the right hand side. So less than 10 knots. Long airplane, sitting in the 1000, not in the 900. So let's ensure we consider that when turning into the gate. And that's looking pretty good. Yeah, GSX, I'm happy with where we are. And stop. APU bleed on. Parking brake set. Cabin crew, all doors in park. So, slides are disarmed, and... Come on, GSX. What is it doing? Request deboarding, please. Parking checklist. External lights. Set. Parking brake. Set. Transponder. Standby. Parking checklist complete. Alright, so let's go ahead and ensure that our chocks are set. In a place like this, I'm not really expecting a ground power unit, so We're gonna keep that APU running. Well, and here we are. So we've made it. 8 hours flight time. Yeah, we parked kinda okay. A351 is actually over here, but that's down to GSX. They gave us a suboptimal parking guidance. But well, here we are. So that's how we do this in the Caribbean. Now, some of you actually asked about the way I flew the approach, that I came in rather low. That was actually fully intentional. So, when I'm flying visual approaches, I want to give myself options, and especially with aircraft such as the A350, such as the A330, which are really, really good gliders, I very much prefer to come in a little bit lower, and therefore have the aircraft, well, therefore have the option. So, if I'm too low, I can always just level off and fly myself onto a final properly. If I'm too high, then I start to rush the entire approach. And you have to remember one thing, guys. We've just been flying for 7 hours 59 minutes. Including taxi time, that's 8 hours 10. So, even though it's just like 1800 UTC, we've been up since 6 in the morning for a working day like this. And now it's, well, 7 PM, according to the time zone that we are used to. And that really makes a difference. That really, really makes you a tiny bit tired. And you much rather don't want to rush things, especially in an aircraft like this, especially in this kind of operation. Remember, you're only going to do like 2, a maximum of 3 landings a month, usually 1 or 2 landings a month. You don't fly a lot of approaches, so give yourself time and give yourself options. And well, that's what we do by coming in a little bit lower. I rather have a very nice pattern altitude, such as 1500 or 1000 feet altitude, and then get into a good position, than to attempt a continuous descent arrival on a visual. You know, it's one less factor compared to messing yourself over and trying to do the most optimal, which is most likely going to result in a go-around anyway. And that's kind of how I approach this. That's how most pilots approach this. Well, so, if we just go back inside, there's a few things that we have to check after a long-haul flight. First of all, we go to the fuel page and have a look at the fuel used. In the real world, you will never see exactly the same values on the left and the right engine, because they are never in exactly the same maintenance state. One engine is always a little bit worse than the other, and you might see differences of like 500 kilos of fuel usage between the two engines. But what you want to ensure is that your total fuel used plus your current fuel on board equals what you've loaded up at your airport of origin. That's just a gross error check if there's been any fuel leak, which you'd rather want to notice now than have the return crew notice halfway over the Atlantic. So that's the first thing we check. Something that I personally always check after a flight simulator flight is how does the fuel used compare to what SimBrief has calculated. So we've used 50 tons of fuel here. Now let's have a look at the operational flight plan and look at that. Trip fuel 49.6, taxi 400, so we were supposed to use exactly 50 tons. With this we can confirm that our SimBrief profile matches our simulated aircraft. And that is something that I do after each and every flight, and if there is a difference that I cannot explain, then it's usually a good point in time to start adjusting the performance factor in your SimBrief profile. Now, we had a few things along our flight that could have influenced our fuel usage. First of all, we had that weather deviation. Remember when I went 50 miles off track to the left? Well, 51 even. We also had to fly that back, and that added like 100 nautical miles to our flight. But we also flew 1,000 feet higher for the last, well, 3 hours or so, where we went up to flight level 400, where SimBrief had only calculated flight level 380. Therefore, we saved the amount of fuel that we used up for the weather deviation earlier. Another question that you should always ask yourself after a flight like this is, how did my plan work out? So remember, at the beginning of the flight, we decided how much fuel we wanted to uplift, and we went with something like, we said we don't need any extra fuel. Now, ask yourself, did that plan work, or could you do something better next time? We knew that we had those thunderstorms en route from the significant weather chart, remember that? If not, I'm just gonna bring it up one more time, just so that you can get an idea again of what our plan was versus how it actually turned out, because that's the kind of stuff how you gain experience. So, if we have a look into our plan once again, we had that turbulence at the beginning, remember where we turned the seatbelt sign on? And then over here, that's exactly where we had that large weather cell over the Atlantic. That's exactly where we had those thunderstorms and where we had to circumvent some of that weather. So what can we learn from this? Well, it took us about 100 nautical miles extra to fly through this. 50 miles offset left and then 50 miles returning to the center line. So that's a lesson learned for your next flight, in order to tell you, well, this is how much extra we needed for this kind of significant weather chart. Now, that's how you gain experience, that's how you learn. The other thing that we've got to check is that our IRS ran properly. And we can do this down here if we go on to position and then monitor, and down here you see the deviation from your FMS position. And in the real world you wouldn't see 0.1 over here now. In the real world your IRSs would have drifted somewhere between 5 to 10 miles. In some cases maybe even up to like 15 miles. And you would check those, and there is a table in the FCOM that tells you exactly how much they are allowed to drift in order for your aircraft to still be ETOPS certified. And you gotta ensure that you don't exceed that drift. Well, the last thing that you can do in order to do a favor to the next crew is to go down to the ATC comp page, message record all messages, and then, yeah, you would have a list here that any builds apparently doesn't simulate, where you would have to hit reset all in order to get rid of any previously stored messages, so that the next crew cannot confuse a CPDLC message that is relevant to their flight with yours. And last but not least, the checklists have reset themselves. Excellent. Well, and that's it. One more thing you can do is to go on to the aircraft status page and delete all your custom waypoints that you created so that the next crew can use them again. And that's really it. That's how you operate a flight like this. Let's see, where's the wheel page on the 350? Up here. So over here you can check your brake temperatures. In the real world you often brake a little bit more with one foot than you do with the other. So checking the brake temperatures, always a good idea to ensure that you brake evenly. Every pilot has one heavy foot. For me it's the right one. So I always get higher brake temperatures on the right side, and that can easily be 100 degrees more. So on the next flight I'll probably think about using a little bit less brakes on the right and a little bit more on the left. So again, something you do learn over there. Well, my friends, and that's really all I have to offer you for now. Thank you so much for flying along. I hope you enjoyed it. I do hope that I will find the time to do another couple of live streams over the next couple of days. Hopefully, again, some interesting A350 routes, maybe something African if you guys are interested into that, because that's a whole different operation than what you do over the North Atlantic. And for now, thank you so much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of the weekend, a successful next week, and I'm really looking forward to see you all again on the next one. In the meantime, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and see you all again on the next one.